Making a criminal. A reality flick series. Starring very important people. Very important. Big shots. Making a criminal. A reality flick series. Millions of taxpayer dollars. Reality ahead.
Warning.
All roads eventually lead to reality, Boulevard. Detour in any direction, to the delusion all trolley. Disc number 2.
Can't wait till you end up in prison.
Class, let's do a quick quiz. As always, they are self-scoring. 1. Surely this is about a divorce, correct? Or, no. 2. Are these participants involved? The mother? The father? Each child? Well, if so, how? 3. Are the participants' actual actions or wishes noted, reviewed, documented, put on any record, or ever mentioned? Looking at what was viewed and what will be viewed, so keep that in mind. 4. In regards to Miss Sileski's actions and or statements, has any one of those involved raised anything at all in the proper context?
If not, then who exactly are they reporting on and talking and billing about?
5. In regards to Mr. Stengel's actions, statements and or complaints, has any one of those involved raised anything at all in the proper context?
If not, then who exactly are they reporting on and talking and billing about?
6. In regards to Maya's actions, statements, complaints, and or wishes, has any one of those involved raised anything at all in the proper context?
If not, then who exactly are they reporting on and talking and billing about?
7. In regards to Alex's actions, statements, complaints, and or wishes, has any one of those involved raised anything at all in the proper context?
If not, then who exactly are they reporting on and talking and billing about? Was there a family switch at some hospital?
8. Did one of them get one thing wrong regarding one of the participants, Miss Sileski?
Reality, they got 0 correct. In fact, they did not get one right.
9. Okay, what about the second participant, Mr. Stengel?
Same thing. 0.
10. Third participant, Maya?
Same thing. 0.
11. Not sure why I'm asking. What about the fourth participant, Alex?
Now you are correct.
Oh, Alex, the fourth one has matches?
No. You were correct when you said.
Not sure why I'm asking.
Same thing. 0.
Therefore, the participants are simply figureheads and props, and the games being played by so many are having a grand old time.
If it's not about any of them, then how can it be about their divorce? Or any divorce, for that matter?
So then, what is this all about? Where is this all going? And why is it still going? December the 9th, 2010. The court ordered psychological evaluation and the Northwest Hospital Dove program. Scammed by Ms. Susan Sileski. Working Development Research Stage. Agreement. Pause to read. Minimum age of 18 required.
Northwest Hospital, Domestic Violence Program. Dove. A LifeBridge Health Center.
Target locked.
Very brief summary of history. Less than 2% of what took place during the 2 weeks prior to the emergency psych evaluation scam.
Staying in a sick house is not success.
It's the only ball we got.
Understand? And he's sitting here on his computer. I think you should videotape all kinds of stuff. He's sitting here on his videotape on his computer.
I'm playing on the gotomypoint.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I did pick it up. It was ringing, but I didn't know your password.
So I put it down. It's got to be in the kitchen somewhere. I did pick it up. It was on the couch, right?
My phone was ringing?
It was ringing, and I went to pick it up, and I asked Alex if he knew your password. He said no.
Right.
You never asked me my password.
Yes, I did. You were watching Avatar. I certainly did. I looked right at you, and I said, what's the password?
I didn't hear. I don't know his password.
He's staying in a sick house. He's not sick.
It's the only ball we got.
Understand? And he's sitting here on his computer. I think you should videotape all kinds of stuff. He's sitting here on his videotape on his computer.
And playing on the go-to-my-points.com.
911 calls. Mr. Stengel calls police at 6:03 p.m. regarding Miss Silisky's stealing cell phone. Lies about it. While waiting for police, she calls back and lies again and throws kids under the bus. Let's also count the number of false statements to police in just one interaction.
So you have to tell me that first. Yes.
What the heck is that? Yes.
Well, I'm actually in the office, so I don't have a thing.
You don't have a thing?
Well, I don't have a handheld.
Well, I'm going to go over to John Seville's for a little while. They're having pizza and a couple people over, so I'm just going to go chill rather than sit under the microscope and scrutiny of you.
All right, where's my phone?
It's in the kitchen. All I did was pick it up to answer it, Mark. It's in the kitchen or in the laundry room. I didn't walk far with it, for God's sake.
No?
Where's my
Okay.
phone?
All right, well, you have to come home.
I don't have to do anything I don't want to. I'm going to go to John's for a little while. I'll be home later. What's the big deal?
Can you go check the kitchen?
What do I have to come home for? Are you the dictator now?
No.
The guy who videotapes me, records me, films me, is trying to make me out to be a crazy woman, and now I have to come home because why?
Miss Stengel? Miss Stengel? This is Officer
Hey, Fox,
Boulevard.
I can't even hear you, but I'm going to
Hold on.
right now.
Hold on, listen.
Ma'am? This is Officer Bell with Baltimore County Police Department. Your
Yeah?
husband actually went to the kitchen and tried to find the phone, and he's saying it's not there. Where exactly in the kitchen did you put the phone?
I don't remember, ma'am. I was on the phone with my friend, and when his phone rang, and I went to pick it up, and I went to open it, and he changed his password, so I couldn't do it, so I must have put it down. His phone hasn't been stolen, if that's what he thinks. Is that what he's thinking?
Yes, ma'am. So we need to know where the phone is.
Okay, ma'am. I don't know where the phone is at this very moment, but I'm not a thief, and I didn't take his phone. So when I get home, I will hand him his phone. I'm sure I will find it. Okay, he lost his phone the other day, and his son found it. His camera's all over the house. Maybe his camera can locate it for him. I don't know. But I don't have it.
You don't have it.
Excuse me?
You sure you don't have it?
I'm absolutely positive.
Okay.
Okay? I'm positive I don't have it. I mean, I'm not sure why my husband is now calling the police every time something happens in our house.
Because apparently you guys were involved in a domestic dispute, and he called the police to try to settle it. And you decided to leave the
When were
home.
we in a domestic dispute?
8. False statements to Mr. Stengel, and 18 to Officer Bell, totaling 26. In 2 minutes, 35 seconds. That's a false statement every 6 seconds. That will give you an idea how some of the timeline is done. 6 seconds is not close to her record. It's in the 2-second range. Nor is 26 in one conversation. It's not that Miss Silisky lies, rather she finds it nearly impossible to ever tell the truth. Her entire life is a lie and a fraud. November 27, 2010, at 6:27 p.m. Not even in a domestic dispute. Yet, a mere one day, 14 hours 26 minutes later. Miss Silisky continues her outrageous and violent behaviors, now throwing cameras and equipment, always in front of the children.
Look, and show them videotape, and you're trying to get me help. Shut your flipping, disgusting, gross, psycho freak mouth. You're a freak. You are a freak, and you need aid. Freak. He's a freak, okay? I don't even want to talk. Stop talking to me! Stop!
Stop talking to me. Videotape that. Stop talking. I can't get this guy to shut up. He just doesn't shut up. He keeps going on and on. It's unbelievable. He's like a broken record. I'm just trying to get you help. And he's the one with the frickin' drug addiction.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I have videotape of all your drugs, buddy, so I can't wait to use that.
They're all medicated by...
Yeah, they are.
prescribed
I
by
can't wait
doctors.
until I have my meeting with Malika on Monday.
Okay.
Malika, your pain management guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's not too keen on your hallucinations.
Yeah, I'm hallucinating. Okay.
You did, and you told me, and you told it in front of Jody, so hold on to that one, buddy.
Okay.
Drug addict. User and abuser. They're right next, I can't, this is what I'm talking about. Right next to me.
Yeah, the kids are in the room.
Yeah. Well, you don't shut up. You don't stop talking.
Right,
Stop talking.
Kids are in the room.
Right now, I actually agree with him because I do not like you right now yelling at him.
I'm not yelling at him. I'm asking him to stop talking.
She'll figure it all out.
Yeah, you will too.
That's too loud for my ears.
If I am wrong, I will apologize. But all I want you to do is get some help.
Yeah. Can I have the key, please, so I can have some privacy in the room that's videotaped, please?
No.
Yeah. I'll
No,
break
you
it
can
down.
go upstairs. You
I'll
go to the
break it
basement.
down. Give me the key.
Go in the basement then.
Give me the key.
Nobody's going down there.
Yeah,
No.
this is my house. I can go in any room I
No,
want
because you
to.
stole my camera, so you
I
can't.
stole your camera?
Yeah.
Ooh.
The one you gave me back, by the way, was from behind here. It wasn't one of those two, but let's try.
Excuse
It
me.
was the one that was back here. Where's the one back here?
Oh, that I have too.
Yeah, you know, because they're numbered, by the way. You didn't know that. Sorry.
Sorry. Didn't know they were numbered. Sorry.
Well, they are.
Oh, you want to know what the other one is? Mr. Covert, who you have to show the cops all your stuff? Let's see. Here's one over here hiding behind the couch.
Okay, so...
Look, here it is. Let's throw it in the trash can. Here it is.
What are you going to do? What are you doing? Suze, what are you doing?
She's going psycho.
I'm sorry, guys.
She's going psycho. She's going psycho.
I'm sorry, guys.
She's going psycho. She's going psycho.
Mr. Stengel calls police again at 9:04 p.m. Miss Siliski, the victim, in such fear for her safety, threatens Officer Bell. She will report her for coming to the home.
Mom, the mini piano is right here. Mom, the mini piano is right here. Who is it? You got, like, get something to pull this out.
Now why are you here? Now why is she here?
Why are you throwing things?
I'm not, oh, get a life, Mark. I'm not throwing anything. I gave you your camera. If you're going to call her every 5 seconds, I'm going to report you for coming back for domestic issues that are ridiculous. Stop calling the cops and using them erroneously.
You're going to report her.
She's not allowed to do that. It's a domestic thing. I'm allowed to do what I want in my house. If you're going to call the cops every time somebody said something you don't like, you need mental help.
Mom, could you please, like, get something to...
Yes.
Alex, please come with me.
No, let him finish what he's doing. He doesn't need to stop every time you call the police. It's ridiculous. The kid hasn't eaten. Leave him alone.
Okay.
Leave him alone.
Alex,
Leave
come
him
with me.
alone.
Alex, come with me. Please. Thank you, I appreciate it. Maya.
Mark.
Maya, no, you cannot. I'm sorry, sweetie. You cannot. Go. Eat, lick your fingers and go upstairs in the bedroom. Thank you. Go ahead and close the door. Why?
I feel so badly for what you're doing to these kids. It's ridiculous. And I can't even get them out of the house. Unbelievable. Torture, torture, torture to an 8 and a 10-year-old. It should be outlawed. Unbelievable. Okay, good. Not that it's ultimately going to do much of anything because he's got all kinds of videotape that he thinks he's going to use against me. That's why I had the police here yesterday announcing his case.
Apparently, the police contacted the mobile crisis unit after witnessing Miss Sileski's behaviors. The following morning, November the 28th, 2010, mobile crisis calls to speak with Mr. Stengel regarding Miss Sileski at 10:18 a.m., lasting 10 minutes 5 seconds. Miss Sileski, paranoid, checks phone to see what number called. She calls to hear who called and hangs up, lasting 4 seconds. 21 seconds later, Miss Sileski calls back. Attempts to redirect the problem. Mobile Crisis refuses to speak with her. Miss Siliski continues her rant, lasting over 3 minutes. They still refuse to speak to her. This is all caught on video.
Mr. Mosby, you nurture children by bullying them. London responds better to gentle encouragement. And especially the shiny gold stars.
Stepweiler, if you can get a speech out of London, be my guest. But if you can't, Mr. Tipton is going to...
Then, she calls back. Get ready for a slew of lies, and a whole lot of allegations equals confessions.
How are you distracted by sweet potato pie? I wouldn't mind looking for a penny in a haystack with him.
Look at her. Drooling over here like he's some kind of Greek Adonis. Hello, my name is Adonis.
Sorry, I got disconnected. I just saw that there was a call on my phone to this number from 3743 Birch Lane. I have no idea. My husband's gone a little nuts, so it's possible that he's losing it and calling crisis center. I don't know.
This guy's just working it.
Yeah. 3743 Birch Lane.
I love a good ambulance, especially with egg whites filled with loads of butter.
Stable?
The ambulance is the most important artifact found in the last 100 years. According to Greek mythology, this
Well, it was
is
like around 10:18 this morning.
She was born from the sea. I was going to say that.
Me too. But it sounds so much better coming from your lips.
So did you want to wear these? These aren't very thick.
Hey, Jordan.
No,
You told us what stuff is. What's this?
I think so.
That's a fire extinguisher.
Sure. Do you know why he was calling?
Thank you. Want to take a picture?
Okay. And what do you all do? What do you all do?
Pull these sun across the sky and
I know, but I'm asking you as a company, what do you do?
wings good night in through the ears of the corpus.
Oh, okay, so like, therapy, clinical therapy, could you just,
How am I going to compete with this guy?
what, can you elaborate a little bit? Because I may need the resources, so I'm asking you what, well, my husband has a drug addiction problem, and, okay, he's also very paranoid, and he's been videotaping everybody in the house, and locking doors, not letting people in, and listen. No, I actually think what he's trying to do is build a case that it's someone else in the house that's crazy, and that's what has me a little concerned. So he's got 2 young children here, and he keeps calling the police, and the police have not found any reason to be here, and it's getting kind of out of control. So, I don't know. I mean, he sees a lot of doctors and he has a lot of medication. He's got severe ADD. He hasn't worked in 3 years. He doesn't have an actual diagnosis. I mean, there was a therapist a couple of years ago, last year, who referred to him as narcissistic. That's not really a diagnosis. I mean, I don't know, but he is acting very odd, and his behavior is erratic, and I don't know, it's very strange. So I don't know why he's calling you, except for the fact that he's trying to build a case against someone else to kind of deflect from what's going on with him. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Bye.
Mobile Crisis calls Mr. Stengel again, regarding Miss Siliski. Called in, November 29, 2010, at 5:12 p.m., 4:13 minutes 17 seconds. Deputy sheriffs arrive at 7 p.m. to evict Mr. Stengel. Miss Silisky filed her first fraudulent protective order at 8:53 a.m. Mr. Stengel advised that the mobile crisis just called. Deputy sheriff calls mobile crisis unit back at 7:13 p.m. Due to court order, Mr. Stengel evicted from his own home. Mobile crisis unit kept calling Mr. Stengel. Call in, December 1st, 2010, at 10:19 a.m. Goes to voicemail. Mobile crisis unit kept calling Mr. Stengel. Call in, December 2nd, 2010, at 3:51 p.m. Goes to voicemail. Mobile crisis unit even found Mr. Stengel and called him at his cousin's house, urging him to go to courthouse. Miss Silisky loses at trial on December 7th, 2010. Ms. Silisky continues being Ms. Silisky. The mobile crisis unit calls Mr. Stengel again on December 8th, 2010, at 4:56 p.m., lasting almost 9 minutes. Mr. Stengel explained the recent events regarding his son, such as Miss Silisky lost the trial the day before, on December 7th, 2010. After the trial, Miss Silisky said she was dropping Maya off at the house. Miss Silisky, in such fear for her life, as testified again, just hours earlier under oath, demanded to come into the home with her 80-year-old mother, simply to cause more chaos. Mr. Stengel again had to call the police. Miss Silisky manipulates Maya to go to the Weinbergs. Alex says he wants to stay at home. Ms. Silisky says, "Okay, you stay here."
We're leaving.
Huh? No!
Going
No!
Weinbergs, let's go. Yes, we are. We're going to Weinbergs, let's go.
Yay!
Come on.
Where do you want to
Fine.
go?
I'm going to Kelly Weinberg.
Let's go.
All right. Sir, where do you want to go?
Stay here.
Okay, we'll stay here. Let's go.
The next day, December 8th, 2010, Miss Silisky calls Child Protective Services to have Alex removed from a drug-addicted and violent man. They rejected her scam. Miss Silisky takes matters into her own hands and intercepts Alex at the carpool stop before the family home. Cheryl McCann, normally a carpool parent, however on that day, was used in a hostage takeover scheme. Alex was taken to the Weinberg compound and held prisoner with his little sister, Maya. This taking place just a couple hours before the crisis unit's call. When the deputy sheriffs arrived, on November 29th, 2010, to evict Mr. Stengel, they asked about the gun. Mr. Stengel took them to its location, where it had been for over 20 years. Obviously, Miss Silisky moved the gun, so when the deputy sheriffs arrived, it would appear Mr. Stengel was being uncooperative and hiding a weapon. Danger, danger. However, when Deputy Sheriff Trickle asked Miss Silisky to come to the house and show him where the gun was located, she refused. Now, just one day after returning home, Mr. Stengel was still unaware where his gun was. So, when the crisis unit called Mr. Stengel, yet again, he was finally convinced to go to the courts and get an order for the psych evaluation. Note, Miss Silisky's primary physician maintains records of Miss Silisky's long-term mental illness.
Dr. Alan Kimmel, Ms. Stegel's medical doctor, aware of Ms. Stegel's mental health issues.
December 9th, 2010. Following, a note regarding this date, December 9th, 2010, provided by Mr. Stengel's attorney in a sworn court filing, in a couple weeks, on December 21st, 2010. Note, this added here, simply to show other avenues were being tried.
1. On or about December 9, 2010, I began telephone conversations with Ellen P. Rosenberg, Esquire, counsel for defendant, in an attempt to resolve the issue of access to the minor children. The conversations took place immediately after defendant's petition for protection from domestic violence was dismissed, on December 7, 2010.
December 9th, 2010, Mr. Stengel goes to the courts to obtain the order, per the mobile crisis unit. The next 4 pages contain the application and the order. Simply put, it states what has occurred.
Petition for emergency evaluation. The petitioner, Mark Stengel, requests that this court order an emergency evaluation of Susie Silisky Stengel. 2. Evaluee address.
Relatives, Janet and Fred Schatzman.
7. The evaluee has been prescribed the following medication for her mental disorder.
Not sure the name, but she used to call them happy pills a few years ago.
8. I do not know whether the evaluee is taking medication as prescribed.
Checked.
9. the evaluee is demonstrating the following behavior that leads me to conclude that he/she currently has a mental disorder.
Screaming uncontrollably, throwing cameras and equipment, stealing things not belonging to her, involving the children.
10. The evaluee presents a danger to the life or safety of the evaluee or others because
this is not normally how her volatility and irrational swings go.
11. The evaluee has access to the following firearms, weapons.
.357 Magnum handgun, unaccounted for.
I hereby certify and declare under the penalties of perjury that the matters and facts stated in this petition are true, to the best of my knowledge, information, and belief. Date:
December the 9th, 2010.
Petitioner.
Signed, Mark Stengel. Additional, number 7. In chaotic and irrational behavior using the children as pawns, refused to bring our 10-year-old son to his first and second basketball games. I coach his team, as I have for years. Police have been called by me several times. The first time/second time was after she stole my cell phone and ran out of the house. The police officer called her, and she lied about it to the officer. When Officer Bell asked her to come home, Susie refused, saying she was going to a friend's, and my phone was in the kitchen. Officer Bell asked me to call my cell, and there was no ring. But 5 seconds later, Susie called the house. It rang once and she hung up. She said she was answering my phone for me. My younger son said it did not ring. AT&T records show no calls coming or going anytime within over an hour. The day before, she took my USB plug that works my wireless mouse and denied it. Later that night, Susie was extremely volatile, throwing a camera adapter from a commercial camera and the camera into a big vase. I called police again, and Officer Bell came back. She again asked Susie if she took my cell and she said no. Since we were all in the kitchen, she asked Susie where in the kitchen she left it. She did not know. 2 days later, she told my cousin she did take it. The police have been over several times. The mobile crisis unit has called me every day, except for one, I think, and keep asking me if I had gone to the courthouse to fill this emergency evaluation. Yesterday, she took my daughter, 8 years old, out from school 1.5 hours early. I have been with my 10-year-old son. 2 days ago she grabs my daughter's hand and would not release it. She has a large sore, which I had my older son, 22, put medication on, and I bandaged it. Susie tried blaming my older son. However, I was videotaping at the time. My 8 and 10 years were both telling her that Scott, 22, did not touch her, Maya, and it was you, Mom, that would not release her, Maya's hand. My older son simply was taking the hard drive, mine, which Susie grabbed. It is very threatening and chaotic, and not only did I not know what she will do next, I am convinced she does not know what she will do next. The mobile crisis unit will not stop calling me until I file this. I originally did not file this because they told me they will handcuff her if she does not go. I could not imagine my kids having that image burned into their heads. I have offered to her for us both to go, and she says yes, but will never go. Her medical doctor, mine as well, told me he has had difficulty getting her to come in, and has been unsuccessful. She tells my kids I am a drug addict. I have chronic back issues and finally found a doctor, Dr. Asdorian, that can do both ortho and neuro procedures. I was just at my pain management doctor on Monday, as he told me Susie called him. I abused the pills. I brought my prescription, and he could see I could have filled it on the 14th, and filled it on the 16th. Plus he counted the balance of pills and gave me a report, which I have with me. Please help me help her, and my kids. My older son, 22, would not go over to the house in fear he may be shot. He is at the University of Maryland, studying for criminal law. Level-headed kid. Schatzman, 59 River Oaks Circle, Pikesville, Maryland, 21208. Weinberg, 3681 Ashley Way, Owings Mills, Maryland, 21117.
Endorsement and order. In the matter of the emergency evaluation of Susie Selesky Stengel. Case number, 03C10133863. Orders that any peace officer take into custody and transport the evaluee to the nearest emergency facility, for examination by a physician. Date: December 9, 2010. Judge signed.
Note, the court order states,
in the matter of the emergency evaluation of Susie Selesky Stengel, finds probable cause to believe that the named individual, evaluee, has shown the symptoms of a mental disorder, and presents danger to the life or safety of the evaluee or others, and, therefore, orders that any peace officer take into custody and transport the evaluee to the nearest emergency facility, for an examination by a physician.
Note,
Emergency evaluation.
And,
mental disorder.
And,
for an examination by a physician.
Miss Selesky was taken to Northwest Hospital, where she arrived December the 9th, 2010, at 8:52 p.m. As you will see, Miss Selesky conned them into thinking she was the victim of domestic violence. Although the order stated the evaluation was to be done by a physician, that was not the case. The report was completed after midnight, making the report date December the 10th, 2010. Note, Eva DeVaughn's credentials.
MS. C. A C. AD. Intervention Specialist. Dove. MS Master of Science. Typically awarded to graduate students in scientific or technical fields. MSW. Master of Social Work.
Note, her degree is not, even in the field of social work. Note, as can be seen, there are many specific areas one can focus on. Or not.
Substance Abuse Counseling Certification in Maryland. The second level is known as the Certified Associate Counselor Alcohol and Drug. CAC-AD.
Note, level 2 of 3 levels. And, alcohol and drug. This should be interesting. This, a mere 2 days after Miss Selesky's first fraudulent protective order trial was dismissed.
Target locked.
Psych 1.
Domestic Violence Lethality Screen. Performed on December the 10th, 2010, at 23 minutes after midnight. By Eva G. DeVaughn.
Note, Eva G. DeVaughn is not a physician, not a psychologist or psychiatrist. Note, she dealt with drug abuse. Psych 2. Reason for referral.
Domestic violence.
Note, here we go again.
Type of abuse.
Psych 3.
Psychological.
Psych 4.
Physical.
Psych 5.
Emotional.
Huh? Just 10 days earlier, and only 1 day after her first fraudulent protective order filing. And what about this?
I'm kind of screwed in this way because he hasn't physically hurt me.
Psych 6.
Relationship of physical abuser.
Spouse.
Note, abuser. She is the victim. Really? How much did this sham cost the taxpayers? Besides, now witnessing yet another professional being victimized, violated and abused. Psych 7.
Have you been threatened with weapons?
No.
Hold on. Like I know. No. Huh? And the fear of gun and bullet scarred. Ground control to Major Selesky. The crash and burn site is just up ahead. Keep talking. And what about this? November the 29th, 2010, filing just 10 days prior. J.
He owns a gun and I feel afraid all the time.
And what about this? December the 7th, 2010, page number 52, testimony just 2 days prior.
I'm afraid of the gun.
And what about this? November the 15th, 2011, in Miss Selesky's second fraudulent protective order petition, she writes,
unregistered handgun.
Note, which is false. Then, writes, noted as A.M.
Is now with the Baltimore County Police until further notice.
Note, danger, danger.
Have you been threatened with weapons?
No.
So, why did the police need to take the gun? Well. And what about this? The same fraudulent petition, and since the gun was in custody, Miss Selesky writes, noted as A.N.
He likely has another one.
Really? A year later, and never mentioned before. Now she fears there are more than one gun? This was when Miss Selesky also told both the children their father was going to murder them, and their mother. Or were both children lying? And what about this? April the 12th, 2012, appeal to the second fraudulent protective order, mentioned now only because it happens to be on the same page number 18, and relates to the same.
Were you seeing a psychiatrist or taking any kind of medication at that time for psychiatric or mental illness of any sort?
No.
You have no history of mental illness at all?
No.
Huh?
You have no history of mental illness at all?
No.
Note, false. 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 Times infinity. Times obvious. Now, to the also related garbage. This related to this very psych evaluation, and Mr. Stengel's petition.
Do you have any understanding as to why your husband had you committed in an emergency evaluation?
Objection. Only if she has the knowledge from what he may have told her.
I only know what he wrote to the judge, and he said I was suicidal. And he said I had a gun, which was in his writing testimony that I had a gun and I was suicidal.
Note, really. More garbage. Even though it was just provided before this psych evaluation garbage, let's take a look. It clearly says, .357 handgun, still unaccounted for. Note, feel free to go through the rest, but this is it. And, where does it say, Mr. Stengel said, or even used the word, suicidal? Well, Ms. Victim. Besides, these are not even counted in the over 2,000 documented counts of perjury. Hold on. I believe Mr. Carney, the proclaimed officer of the court, would like to say something.
Had you ever threatened to commit suicide?
Not on your life, never.
Never said that in front of Mark
Never.
Stengel or anyone else?
Never.
So the allegations that he made in the emergency petition, they were not correct, they were false?
You will have to excuse Mr. Carney. I'm extremely high-level unconscionable, like Miss Silisky, when you spent your entire life fabricating complete bullshit to hide the fact they don't possess a conscience. You can no longer differentiate what's true or false. And what about this?
Right, but you had asked me originally when we get to that, we'll discuss it, and then in here she says he owns a gun and I'm afraid all the time.
Okay.
Okay.
And what's your point?
Well,
Ma'am, did he own a gun?
Yes.
Were you afraid because he had a gun?
Yes.
Okay, next question.
Now, that's how you play concentration. There is more, but let's continue. This next one is also, well, very interesting. Psych 8.
Think she might try to kill you. Not answered.
Note, she only answers that in sworn filings and sworn testimony and in lies to the children and everyone else. Psych 9.
Does she have a gun?
Yes.
Really? What did Miss Silisky give Officer Dix 9 days earlier, on November the 30th, 2010, at 3:55 p.m., and just 2 hours 25 minutes after the computer hacker is seen committing a federal crime? Did she give Officer Dix a water gun? Apparently, Miss Silisky did not want to introduce her computer hacker to Police Officer Dix. Besides, the gun was missing from its location on November the 29th, 2010. And just 2 days before this psych scam, Miss Silisky swore under oath on December the 7th, 2010, on page number 49, stating,
He has a gun in the house.
Which was obviously false sworn testimony, since she gave it to Officer Dix 8 days prior. However, that was the only thing Mr. Stengel heard regarding his gun. After the trial, and later that night, he looked, and his gun was not where it was kept. Therefore, as of the evening of December the 7th, 2010, he had no idea where his gun was. Then, 2 days later, lies during this psych scam. Psych 10.
Jealous or controlling activities.
Yes.
Really? Of what? How well and easily Miss Silisky commits crimes? Psych 11.
Domestic violence. Spies or leaves threat messages.
Yes.
Note, any evidence? Yes. Miss Silisky said so. Oh, you want actual messages? The dog stepped on the delete key. However, if you're talking about Miss Silisky's actions, we have videos, many, voicemails, plural, emails, plural, text messages, plural. Pick your poison. Poison in, poison out. If you prefer, you can also get them all from the so-called experts. Psych 12.
Victim high risk.
Yes.
Note, always the victim. so high risk, multiple abuse organizations have been needed and used. Like Hannah, or the victim, writing this report. Psych 13.
Is the patient afraid to go home?
Yes.
Note, unless she has her 80-year-old mother/security detail with her. Psych 14.
Car patient go somewhere they feel safe?
Yes.
Note, A. Miss Siliski told the Weinbergs she has no place to go, as told to Mr. Stengel by Kelly Weinberg after Alex escaped the Weinberg compound. B. This over a month after Miss Siliski leaving the approved letter stating she was going to her Aunt Janet's. C. Because the Weinbergs have kids and would be easier to manipulate Alex and Maya. D. Interestingly, Miss Siliski wound up at her Aunt Janet's. E. After Alex escaped the Weinberg compound, Mr. Stengel advised Kelly the no place to go was bullshit. F. What did Kelly Weinberg do with that enlightening information provided on December the 18th, 2010? You will learn in the timeline just days later. G. Kelly is a social worker. She would know. Like all in the psychology field. They would know. Not. H. Like Eva Devon, sitting right in front of it. Yes, it is the correct word. Reality, the real question should be, is there a place that mental patient can go for society to feel safer? Footnote, when Miss Siliski was being picked up at the Weinbergs for this psych evaluation, where Alex and Maya were being held prisoners, Mr. Stengel wanted to take his kids home. The police officers, including Officer Miller, and the lieutenant with his puffed-out chest, threatened Mr. Stengel, if he doesn't leave without his kids, he will be arrested. And further noted, the Weinbergs do not want Mr. Stengel there, or to contact them. It was several days later that Alex escaped the Weinberg compound, which he called prison. What Mr. Stengel knew was he was simply witnessing more police being lied to, abused and conned. Note to the footnote, the daughter was not even permitted to go outside the Weinberg compound. Also important to note, Mr. Stengel tried to have the police call the home first, and of them put the children in a room upstairs, and not just knock. However, they were ignorant and irate. Officer Miller stated,
"What crackpot judge signed this order?"
Maybe Officer Miller can ask Internal Affairs that question when it's his turn. The end game. Are these bad people and police officers, or just conned fools? Psych 14A.
Where patient is
staying with a girlfriend and her husband.
Note, after disparaging Kelly Weinberg and her children for the previous 5 years, Mr. Stengel took photos of the Weinberg compound, given he knew Kelly Weinberg committed multiple counts of perjury on December the 7th, 2010, as she testified against Alex and Maya, swearing to what was not even possible. Like so many. The actual transcript, page number 56, but not the actual audio, where Kelly swears under oath.
And when I opened the door, I saw another car, like flying up our street.
Really, Kelly? You did? Because, from your door, where you actually were, noted by the letter K, you can't see the house next to your neighbor's house across the street, let alone down the street. The trees, blocking your view, otherwise known as reality, are quite tall. And, if we look a little further out, it's even more obvious this sworn testimony was perjurious, fraud, and abusing minor children. And, why should the judge believe you? Well, as you testified on the page before, page number 55, stating,
I'm a child and family therapist. And, I'm also a school counselor.
The most easily abused and conned industry of them all. Then, Kelly and Andy Weinberg participate in the false incarceration of Mr. Stengel. So deluded, they surrendered their own First Amendment rights, as they assist in abusing so many Jews and other victims. It should be noted, Kelly and Andy's 2 boys attend Boys Latin School.
It's August 26th at 9 a.m. and if anyone hears this, I just want to stay with my dad. By that I mean like full custody with my dad.
While outside the Weinbergs and waiting for his children, Mr. Stengel waited in his car the entire time. After about 20 minutes, he thought something wasn't right, so he called the police station. They sent the lieutenant, the one with the puffed-out chest. You know, the big shot. He too got lost in the Weinberg compound. When they finally came out, was when Mr. Stengel was threatened by these officers, but sounded more like outlaws, in the Wild West. Luckily, Miss Silisky herself documented the events and actions of those police officers. Although in her delusional mind, thought she was noting something Mr. Stengel was doing wrong, it confirms the actions of the Weinbergs and those police officers, noted in Miss Silisky's interrogatories. Page number 12, cropped so to keep the rest for the timeline. Miss Silisky's answers to interrogatories, provided on April the 8th, 2011. Page number 12. Number 11. Miss Silisky states,
Thursday, December 10th, 2010. Plaintiff has a judge sign an emergency petition for a psychological evaluation of me, stating to the judge that I am suicidal. The police do not want to give the kids to plaintiff who is acting crazy outside of the Weinberg house. They waited for my mother to arrive from Severna Park, in order to take care of the kids. They told plaintiff he was not allowed on Ashley Way, or on the Weinberg property, or he would be arrested. I went to the hospital and passed the evaluation. The kids wanted to know why Daddy sent me to the hospital in the middle of the night, when I wasn't sick. People with personal knowledge are Kelly and Andy Weinberg, Sally Silisky, Catherine Stevens, Sarah Blattner, Scott Kirkin, and Dr. Sean Costello.
Note, this is self-explanatory. Even the list of those with personal knowledge, who live in Washington, D.C., Oregon, New Jersey, and, in Mr. Stengel's 6+ year, and ongoing research, which he calls it all, puzzles, inside of puzzles, each with their own numerous puzzle pieces, where each puzzle, or puzzle piece mentioned, is never alone, as they all connect, in a gigantic web of crimes, psychological warfare, fraud, and deceit, waged upon everyone. We provide just a few puzzle pieces for Dr. Sean Costello-Woolley, another psychologist, who will be highlighted, for her own unethical actions, in cooperation with Dr. Catherine Killeen, in episode 10 or 11. Then, again for filing a false police report. And, to partially dissect this garbage, as it is fully dissected in the timeline, she arrives at the station, where the police report states,
She brought 5 letter/packets in total to the precinct with her, all unopened.
Then, clarifies the reality.
Mrs. Costello-Woolley advised her friend Susan has been working with the domestic violence officer in Pikesville precinct regarding this matter and was urged to make a report.
Simply put, she was reduced to a repeating puppet drone, just following her cult leader's orders. And, in a 100% complete bullshit statement, says,
Mrs. Costello-Woolley became alarmed this week, when she went to her office and received another letter, that had the word dead, written on the front.
Yet curiously, she did not bring that one to the station. Besides, how alarmed was Dr. Woolley? So alarmed, she waited until she was given her marching orders. And, if those small samples weren't enough, as Dr. Woolley has a rather large file, and just one more from that file. Yet again, participating in the false incarceration of Mr. Stengel, while, deluded enough, surrenders her own First Amendment rights. As Mr. Stengel always warns, reality can be very painful for some people. What's important here is it documents many of the actions of the police, participating in the restraining of the minor children's liberties held hostage, and to remain under house arrest, by assisting Miss Silisky, the Weinbergs and Sally Silisky, in those very criminal acts. Actions, such as the police refusing to call the home before knocking on the door, therefore, putting the minor children front and center. Exactly what Mr. Stengel tried to avoid, and the actions of them waiting 45 minutes for Sally Silisky to arrive. Crazy? Allegations equals confessions. Mr. Stengel never even got out of this car. Reality is, they needed to keep Alex and Maya prisoners, against their will, and under house arrest, at the Weinberg compound. In fact, the police told Mr. Stengel, the Weinberg said if he comes near their home, they will have him arrested. Huh? This is the stream of psychotic events that took place, prior to Miss Silisky going to the psych evaluation. The same types of psychotic events, that Mr. Stengel wrote in his petition for the evaluation. Otherwise, it's all bullshit. Even down to her being taken, in the middle of the night, when in fact she arrived at 8:52 p.m. Note, Miss Silisky's 51 pages of interrogatories are loaded with these personal knowledge witnesses, even from other countries. Note, Miss Silisky has sworn to here, and told everyone,
I went to the hospital and passed the evaluation.
And, for further evidence of Miss Silisky conning, both the hospital and Dove, by redirecting the focus from the real issue. 1.5 years later, Miss Sileski explains what is in reality not a part of a psychological evaluation.
And what happened? Did they admit you? Did they release you? What happened?
After blood tests, urine tests, drug tests, every test under the sun, and a psychiatrist and all the rest of it, they did release me.
Besides, there is no psychiatric report. Go on. Testify under oath what else the hospital or Dove professionals told you. A person who was there under court order.
And they said, I think we have the wrong one.
December 18th, the day I finally broke out of prison.
December the 18th, 2010, at 7:55 a.m. After Alex and Maya are being held hostage against their will, the son calls his father very early in the morning from the Weinberg phone, and before his mother woke up, to help him escape from what he called prison. This call noted in the incoming phone call log at 7:55 a.m. The call lasted 23 minutes, as Mr. Stengel stayed on the phone with Alex while planning his escape. Although the home was only a few blocks away, Alex was afraid, since Kelly Weinberg was in her front yard, walking her dog, for quite a while, waiting for her to go elsewhere, which never happened. Therefore, witnessing the escape. And yes, with real, personal knowledge. Mr. Stengel pulled up behind those very tall trees. Mr. Stengel could not see Kelly, nor did Kelly see Mr. Stengel, let alone down the street, and from her front door, perjurious swearing. Mr. Stengel told Alex where he was, told him to put the phone down, just walk out the front door, and at the same time, he will pull up in front of the house, which is what occurred, as Kelly Weinberg looked on, with her dog. Maya loves dogs. Let's listen to Mr. Carney, nearly 2 years later, and on November the 30th, 2012, page number 96, regarding this early morning prison escape. Class, extremely high-level unconscionables, require dissecting not by statement, rather, word by word.
Stengel having to flee the marital home with the children, seek refuge with the Weinbergs, and there was a tug-of-war where Mr. Stengel snatched Alex in his pajamas at 10 o'clock at night, took him to the marital home, wouldn't release him, and we had to bring an end to that.
All authorized.
There is always more. Can you show a little more?
Surely you remember the 2 emails, just 12 hours apart, to Con, the Weinbergs and Sherelle Flowers, with 31 covert or psychotic statements. Well, within that same email dated December the 14th, 2010, at 7:05 p.m., Miss Sileski writes,
With Sherelle as our witness, it is wrong to separate 2 children for one night, 2 or more. She has told Alex this, and I am too.
Notes. 1. Was Sherelle Flowers, a boys' Latin school counselor, providing parental advice to Alex, a 10-year-old student? 2. Allegations equals confessions. 3. Because, after Alex escaped the Weinberg compound just 4 days later, Miss Sileski refused to bring Maya to the family home. Instead, Maya was still restrained and remained a prisoner. 4. And like Mr. Carney's flee, seek refuge, snatched, 10 p.m., pajamas, and other psychotic versions, we have reality. In order for Mr. Stengel to put an end to that, on December the 21st, 2010, is forced to file for a divorce to free Maya. The following day, December the 22nd, 2010, Miss Sileski's counter-complaint and response, where Mr. Carney, noted as number 6, states
that the defendant and the minor daughter, Maya, are currently living with the children's grandmother, Miss Sally Sileski.
Apparently, a few days after the prison break, the Weinberg compound was not a maximum security prison. Therefore, their services, children, and dog, were no longer needed. Back to the psych evaluation scam. Although she arrived at the hospital at 8:52 p.m., and her interrogatories were the middle of the night. Well, 1.5 years later. Let's listen.
Now, tell the court why you were escorted from your home by the Baltimore County Police on December the 9th, 2010.
At around 10:30 p.m. on that evening, the police came to the house and knocked on the door, and Kelly Weinberg answered, and they said that they had a warrant to take me.
As they all manufacture everything on the fly. Here, We have the police arriving at the Weinberg compound at 10:30 p.m. 1¾ hours after Miss Silisky was already at the hospital. However, do you know what is intentionally missing from Miss Silisky's interrogatories? Her medical records. Surprise! Psych 14b.
Are the children safe?
Yes.
Note, Eva. Let's rephrase that. Or, reality phrase that.
Are the prisoners safe?
Yes, thanks to the police assistance. Now, the Weinberg compound is on full lockdown. And, all communications have been cut.
Psych 15.
Does the patient want shelter?
No.
Note, Miss Silisky already conned the Weinbergs to assist in manipulating the children, who in reality subjected their own children to all of this, and other abuses, as will be learned, in the timeline. Psych 16.
Safety plan. Patient moved out of her home with her 2 children on November the 7th, 2010. Patient indicated that she got most of her things out of the home.
Note, typo, November the 7th, 2010, is really December the 7th, 2010. Moved out? Not forced to flee. Let us remember that, shall we? With her 2 children. Really. Got most of her things out of the home. This, you must store in short and long-term memory. And what about this? Police abuses alert.
Where do you want to go?
I want to go to Kelly Weinberg's.
Let's go. All right. Sir, where do you want to go?
Stay here.
Okay,
you stay here. Let's go.
Let's just do one, in regards to...
Patient indicated that she got most of her things out of the home.
Because, if we do more, and there are many, we will start pulling police reports, where the officer states Miss Silisky was irate to the police officer. Yes, the victim. Anyway.
Patient indicated that she got most of her things out of the home.
However, 1½ years later.
Why was it necessary to get clothing for your daughter?
Because I wasn't allowed to take everything beforehand, but this was before you and Mr. Nicholson had worked out me going in and getting half of the kids' clothing. I had nothing. I had a suitcase and a couple belongings.
Psych 17.
Police referral question.
Yes.
Note, bullshit. Psych 18.
Police referral report number.
Not available.
Note, really. Is anyone wondering why? Psych 19.
Police referral, officer's name.
Kelly.
Note, police referral, or court order, or another lied to and conned police officer. Important, talk about a complete disregard for judges and court orders. Psych 20.
Police referral district.
Baltimore County.
Note, really. One must wonder if they can find it in their records. Better yet, have Miss Silisky go through all the county's files to find it. They can just bring one box at a time to her cell. Psych 28.
Police referral district phone.
Oh. You want to verify this? Not available.
Psych 21.
Legal referral.
Yes.
Note, really. Legal and police referral. Tell us more. Psych 22.
Legal referral information. Patient reported that she took out a peace order against her husband on November the 29th, 2010.
Note, we know. A fraudulent peace order. However, does Judge Cox know she referred you here after you lost the trial? Reality, Miss Silisky would have come earlier, but she was busy hacking into computers, confessing crimes, and conning and manipulating many others. Psych 23.
Were other referrals given?
Yes.
Is that a serious question?
Psych 24.
Referrals, hotline number, in-house referral made, legal referral, shelter number.
Note, many. Who doesn't want to help this victim? Psych 24A.
Patient educated on domestic violence.
Yes.
Note, educated? You're asking Professor Silisky. Ms. Silisky may write a book on it. She should have plenty of time. In fact, Eva will now have her own chapter.
We are finally done with that.
Not so fast.
Patient educated on domestic violence.
Yes.
Unless Miss Silisky is swearing under oath 1½ years later, then you will get this version of the same exact question. otherwise known as the super victims version.
I'll move on, Your Honor. When you were released from Northwest Hospital Center, you indicated in your application that you were referred to Chana, C-H-A-N-A. What is that an acronym
Chana
for?
is the Jewish equivalent. Chana is the Jewish equivalent to the House of Ruth. While I was at Northwest Hospital, the Dove people from Northwest, they're basically domestic, I don't know what the acronym stands for, but domestic violence something, came to see me, and they gave me all this paperwork about what domestic violence looked like.
Besides going from knowledgeable to clueless, this victim is also confirming, as the high-risk victim she demands to be, therefore needing the help of multiple abuse organizations. I believe we can easily clarify this with, as she stated,
They gave me all this paperwork
regarding
what domestic violence looked like.
and replace
All this paperwork
with
what domestic violence looked like. What domestic violence looked like. What domestic violence looked like. What domestic violence looked like.
Pre-note, it notes she is there due to Mr. Stengel filing an emergency petition, which is obviously ridiculous. Eva can understand what this victim has gone through. How high risk, you ask? Well, even 1.5 years later, regarding not the chaos, abuses, false incarceration, and violations of so many, but being placed in the back of a police car. Note, ducks have water in their pond. These ducks have no water. Lots of noise, sounds, and theatrics, but no water.
Now, Miss Weinberg is a social worker. So,
Did they indeed take you to a hospital facility?
Northwest Hospital.
They handcuffed you?
No, they did not, on her request.
Put you in the patrol car and took you to Northwest Hospital Center. Is that correct? Want some water?
Yes, he did.
There's some water right here for you, Ms. Stengel.
Yes, they did.
And how long were you held at the Northwest Hospital Center?
Oh, God, till 4 in the morning.
We continue. Site 25.
Patient further reported that within the last 4 years, Mark has become verbally, psychologically, physically, and emotionally abusive towards her.
Note, last 4 years? Okay. So we have, as seen, or can be seen in presentations. 1. Last 4 years. 2. After told she wanted a divorce. 3. Since married. 4. Last 5 years. 5. First time was in 2009, so, since the previous year. 6. Since Oxycontin/Oxycodone cocktails. Spin the fraud and abuse wheel. Site 26.
Mark has physically abused her by pushing, grabbing, and shoving.
Note, really. On November the 29th, 2010 filing. And what about this? See, on or about November 2010, kicking, punching, slapping, rape or other sexual offense, or attempt, shoving, choking and or strangling, stalking. All unchecked. Site 27.
Patient reports that
Mark has a history of untreated substance abuse.
Note, sounds like how she describes her suspiciously deceased brother, Bobby Silisky. However, reality reports, all doctors, prescriptions, even Mr. Stengel's pain management doctor, Dr. Milliker's, December the 6th, 2010, report, a mere 3 days prior, disagrees with the, now, Dr. Silisky. Also noting, history, and untreated. Mr. Stengel is getting worse with time. Now we know, the expert's source, was, Dr. Silisky. And what about this?
And his drug abuse. I mean, I can't say abuse, but his misuse.
And, just 3 days prior. And what about this? Johns Hopkins. Dr. Sheriff Malike, note, Mr. Stengel's pain management doctor. History of present illness, follow-up. Date of evaluation, December the 6th, 2010.
I spoke to the patient about his wife's phone calls to me about his supposed drug abuse. He said that she has a lot of psychological problems, and they are having marital problems, and his primary doctor is involved, Dr. Alan Kimmel. He denied any abuse of the morphine. He is compliant with the medications, and he showed me the leftover MSER 30 mg prescription, 25 tablets. Pain is under control with the current dose.
Which followed.
Stop talking to me! Stop talking to me! Videotape that! Stop talking! I can't get this guy to shut up. He just doesn't shut up. He keeps going on and on. It's unbelievable. He's like a broken record. I'm just trying to get you help. And he's the one with the frickin' drug addiction.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I have videotape of all your drugs, buddy, so I can't wait to use that.
They're all medicated by...
Yeah, they are.
prescribed
I
by
can't wait
doctors.
until I have my meeting with Malika on Monday.
Okay.
Malika, your pain management guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just 3 months prior. And what about this?
They can tell, when I went to the hospital, I was on 40 milligram Oxycontin pills. Okay, if I was like a druggie, I could have kept getting those 40 milligrams forever. And they would have never stopped giving them to me. You understand? And they can look in the books and see, oh, you know, your prescription went down. They can see that. If somebody's a druggie, the stuff goes up until all the others keep going up. They know that. These people have to know that. They have to know that. They have to know me. They have to know I'm telling them what's going on. I don't want to take more stuff. But when I need it, I need it. When I don't need it, I don't need it. I don't want to tell you.
And what about this?
When you're telling him you're breaking him in half, you're taking a little bit more when you feel like it, that's to him a red flag. And that's why he did that. And to really, maybe he is an ass. You're a big ass for telling him that. You should have just said to him, listen, I'm not a pill.
Contains an entry for watching the Truth About Susie video. There should be no video. No one should be watching a video.
Dear Eva, you should not feel alone. There isn't anyone that Miss Silisky didn't try to con, or in most cases, conned. And, just like this one, noted as Psych 27, all those with letters or numbers have solid sourced evidence. That goes for all presentations. Most have 2 or more. This Psych 27, known as the Druggie, Danger 1, well, has its own presentation, which lays out the one with the real drug and alcohol issues. Psych 28.
And
Mark has a history of mental illness,
and
Psych 29.
for which he is seeking treatment.
Note, who does? Who is? Allegation equals confession, or 2 + 2 = 47. Is there a mirror on Eva's desk? And what about this?
You don't even let your wife talk, ever. You don't even let me, because that's what it feels like. So you talk, I do too. Mark! No!
20 seconds later, and picked up on the camera 20 feet away, whacking her own chest, with the same violent force she used 5 or 6 times, to her own head.
Throwing daggers in my fucking heart!
The daggers she speaks about relates to Mr. Stengel telling her, yet again, he wants a divorce.
Throwing daggers in my fucking heart!
Contains an entry for watching the Truth About Susie video. There should be no video. No one should be watching a video.
All authorized.
Dr. Alan Kimmel, Ms. Stegel's medical doctor, aware of Ms. Stegel's mental health issues.
Or, obtain her medical records. Psych 30.
When I left in October of this year.
Note, reality, as this also goes to the mental illness parts, plural. Uprooted the children, with the assistance of Betsy and David R. Stryker, a top-tier executive at T. Rowe Price, and Sally Silisky. Also in reality, she abandoned the home. Psych 31.
He called me and said, if you don't come home, you are going to regret it.
Obviously confused with the Alison Meister-Friedman, staged Halloween scam, invite, information Miss Silisky intentionally omitted from Alison Meister-Friedman, who then, a year later on November the 23rd, 2011, got onto the stand, and committed perjury, and stated how fearful she was of Mr. Stengel. Danger. Yet days before that Halloween, and the many years prior, sent her then, 10-year-old son Josh, with Mr. Stengel in carpool. Or the year before, where Mr. Stengel took Alex and Josh to play golf. Alison Meister-Friedman has her own presentation, and quite large package, which also includes ignoring a subpoena, and confirmed in court, by Bradford G. Y. Carney. Psych 33.
Patient reports that Mark has tried to make her appear to be insane by
Note: A. Mr. Stengel never used that word in regards to Miss Siliski. Therefore, we appreciate the confession. B. Miss Siliski does fine on her own. Psych 34.
calling the police several times to get the children removed from her.
Note: really? Which parent did that? Oh, right. Allegation equals confession. Question for the psychology field. Is there a such thing as super psychotic? How about evil psychosis? Psych 35.
Patient reported incident of stalking by Mark.
Note: stalking was unchecked on her November the 29th, 2010, fraudulent filing. However, Mr. Stengel is getting worse. Add stalking. Danger, danger. Psych 36.
By stating,
we found 18 cameras hidden in the house.
Note: 18, 23, 20, 32, as already heard by Mr. Carney, and coming. Spin the psychotic fraud wheel. Besides, just 2 days earlier, Judge Alexander stated,
Stalking in the home. That's not going to fly.
Note: let's read the transcript on that very topic. It's not the actual audio, but is the actual transcript from December the 7th, 2010. Ms. Rosenberg.
We are suggesting that his constant surveillance of his wife is, number 1, stalking, Your Honor, consistent with the domestic violence statute, but that it is also behave.
The court.
Stalking in the own home?
Yes.
No, that's not flying. Let's go on.
Okay.
To something else.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
I mean, because let's be. I mean, I understand these people aren't getting along, but let's get to the issue here. A lot of people do things in their own home. I mean, I'm not, even. I don't even know what his defense is, but if his argument is, I've got cameras here to make sure that she doesn't make any false accusations against me, what's wrong with that? I mean, stalking in your own home? No.
Constant surveillance?
It's his home. He can do what he wants there. If he wants to run a videotape, if he wants to run tape recorders or whatever, it could be. For his own protection. I don't know anything about these people, but I've heard in 8 years of being on the court and hearing these cases, I hear a lot of people say, I've got to protect myself because they're making allegations against me and this is my defense to prove that I haven't done the things that they say I did.
I would suggest to Your Honor, that those are when the people are aware of the cameras or the surveillance, but not when someone is unaware that they are being videotaped.
The court. Huh?
That you protect yourself by saying to your spouse, I'm going to photograph us or you will be videotaped, so if you do anything, I'm protected.
You don't have to tell somebody that, but anyway that's.
Okay.
I'm telling you that's not going to fly here.
Okay.
Mr. Stengel had thought, was this judge in the home? Because that's exactly why the cameras were there. More so, to protect his children. Ms. Siliski lost that case. However,
when at fraud you don't succeed, try, again, and again, and again.
Besides, what abused person would have a problem with cameras running? Answer:
the same personality type that has a problem with not being physically abused.
Besides Miss Siliski stealing Mr. Stengel's cameras, even hiding one behind the couch, in a classic allegations equals confessions act. Or, the fact Miss Siliski helped with wiring some of the cameras. Or, telling Officer Bell there are cameras everywhere. Or, a month before, and on October the 30th, 2010, during uprooting Alex Amaya, seen on video telling Betsy R. Stryker, there are cameras everywhere, and a host of other things called reality. We also have this.
Because I don't have hidden ones. Thank you.
Hidden ones?
Right.
You don't need hidden cameras. You can have small little things, but these are massive. How come?
Yes, you can't miss them.
Really?
Right. But then you would say, oh, you put little ones up there. What are you hiding? So I put that in and go, they're massive. Now that's a problem. Everything's a problem.
Nobody
Stop.
said you're hiding them.
Please stop.
No, I don't want to stop.
Problem.
Nobody
Stop.
said you're hiding them.
Please stop.
No, I don't want to stop.
After that, Mr. Bradford G.Y. Carney begins his reign of fraud, countless crimes, and evil psychosis. There is a reason Mr. Carney works on the floor below the advertised 6th floor, and works behind a locked door. Not his office door. Hell no. The door to get into the entire suite, from the hallway. Judges' statements or rulings only matter when crimes committed to obtain an order is successful or the judge is part of a crime ring, aka court frauders. Okay, let's continue. Psych 37.
Patient further stated.
He and his son put 2 cameras directly in my face.
Note, getting it? With these extremely high-level unconscionables. Allegations equals confessions. And, just 2 days earlier. And what about this?
Scott, stop.
You're the one in my face.
Get my face. No, you're getting in his face.
That's how fearful Miss Siliski is. There is your victim. More important, we have yet another witness. Even a phone witness, with personal knowledge. After all, they are hearing it during the action. It must be true. Or, allegations equals confessions. Everything is planned and staged for the listener or viewer's convenience. Just ask Alison Meister Friedman about the Boys Latin School Fall Fist staged scam on October the 15th, 2011. However, this act is after the trial, and you will notice her 80-year-old mother/security detail. And just a couple hours after this, during the December 7th, 2010 trial, actual transcript, but not actual voice. On page number 31.
Question.
Ms. Stegel. On what your concerns are.
Answer.
My concern is he's out of control.
Question.
Let me finish the question.
Answer.
Okay. Sorry.
Question.
Please. What your concerns are about yourself that is bringing you here to ask this judge to continue the protective order.
Answer.
He has been physically hurting me.
Just 8 days earlier.
I'm kind of screwed in this way because he hasn't physically hurt me.
He has been physically hurting me.
And 18 pages later, on page number 49.
Question.
So what is your reason for doing that right now?
I'm afraid. My husband has hurt me in the past. He keeps doing it. He prevents me from leaving my house. I'm afraid of him. I'm absolutely afraid of him. He has a gun in the house. He's volatile. I'm afraid of him.
Ms. Rosenberg.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Scott, stop.
You're the one in my face.
Get my face.
No, you're getting in his face.
Psych 38. Patient reports that her physical abuse extends from her husband. Note, not physically abused was a problem. So. And what about this?
I'm kind of screwed in this way because he hasn't physically hurt me. I'm kind of screwed in this way because he hasn't physically hurt me.
Psych 39.
To her 22-year-old stepson, that Mark allows to call Susan names.
Note, even if true, 22 years old. Allows. Besides. Psych 40.
Scott physically assaulted her.
Note, physically assaulted her. How? Psych 41.
By grabbing her arms, while she was holding a computer monitor.
Note, now. Computer monitor? Psych 42.
Patient left the home, again on Tuesday of this week, to stay with a girlfriend.
Note, left home. Not forced to flee. This will be interesting in the future. The future being just 13 days away. And just 1 week after, Mr. Bradford G. Carney, from Royston, Mueller, McLean, and Reed, LLP, got involved, after being introduced by Andy and Kelly Weinberg. Note, Bradford Carney and Andy Weinberg are both Boys Latin School of Maryland alumni.
I would like to see some of those, if you don't mind.
Just as promised, and less than 2 weeks later, on December the 22nd, 2010, Miss Siliski and Mr. Carney file their counter-complaint to Mr. Stengel's filing for divorce, to free Meyer. The first page notes. Desertion. Apparently Mr. Stengel's desertion was assisted by 2 deputy sheriffs. On page number 2, in this sworn filing, it states,
Until the defendant and her children were forced to flee the party's marital home on December 7, 2010.
On March the 21st, 2011, Miss Siliski and Mr. Carney file a motion to have their fraudulent legal bills paid. Bills for abusing Mr. Stengel's children and society, which they demanded Mr. Stengel pay. And, crime ring member, Judge Judith Cienza, agrees. This fraud, sworn under oath filing, it states. Number 5.
Defendant was forced to flee the marital home on December 7, 2010.
Miss Zaleski's provided interrogatories on April the 8th, 2011. Cropped to keep others for the timeline. Number 9. The question is pointless. However, in this sworn filing, it states. Answer.
I was forced to leave the marital home on Tuesday, December 7, 2010.
There is more. There is always more. But let's move on to this victim and her needs and fears. Besides, there are well over 100 video clips. What does Judge Judith Cienza have to say regarding any reality?
Invoice number 45943, dated September 7th of 2011, contains an entry for watching the Truth About Susie video. There should be no video. No one should be watching the video.
Especially if it contains the word truth. Authorized all the way up to and including Governor Larry Hogan. And paid for by the hundreds of victims and the millions of taxpayers. That would be you. Say hello to just some of the crime ring members. Psych 43.
Since her departure, Mark has made verbal threats.
Note, departure? Are you sure? Not forced to flee. And verbal threats? Really? Because it's been 2 days, and they haven't even spoken. Besides, Alex and I were under house arrest at the Weinberg compound, with all communications cut. Psych 44.
And stalked her, by having the police go to several friends and family houses, looking for her, to serve an emergency petition.
Note, several, just her Aunt Janet's, where her note she left while uprooting Alex and Myra on October the 30th, 2010, said she would be staying. B. Janet Schutzman told the police she was at the Weinbergs. That would be 2. C. Police serving Miss Zaleski is stalking. Really? Yes. And Scott D. Schellenberger, the Maryland State's attorney, will happily accept that stalking charge, as well. Psych 45.
Patient reports, no history of mental illness.
Note, Patient reports. Really, Eva? And what about the court-ordered psych evaluation and physician's report? You know, the reason she is there. Note, what about her primary care physician, Dr. Alan Kimmel's records, which Dr. Catherine Killeen refused to obtain? After documenting a 30-minute conversation with Dr. Kimmel, confirming long history of mental illness. Fact, Miss Zaleski has a long history of mental illness. Besides, does anyone really need to see the records to confirm that? Psych 45A.
Is not taking any psychiatric medications.
Besides, no medication exists that can add a conscience where there is none. Therefore, the estimated 4% of the population that ensue chaos for excitement cannot be fixed. Eva just so happens to be speaking with a top-tier unconscionable, the top of the 4%, the extremely high-level unconscionables, like Bradford G.Y. Carney. Fact, Dr. Kimmel states,
Miss Zaleski refused to come in.
Surprise! What say you, Dr. Catherine Killeen, who has a lot in common with Ms. Zaleski, an extremely high-level unconscionable? What better place to hide in the open than in the psychology field? Gotcha. At this point, with Mr. Stengel calling these people, in essence, psychopaths, Eva must be wondering,
why don't any of them file a defamation suit? Not even one of them.
Dr. Catherine Killeen, go on. Explain it. Dr. Killeen's bill notes.
May 19, 2011. Telephone call with Dr. Kimmel. 0.50 hours, for $125.
Apparently, Dr. Killeen verified what Mr. Stengel provided was accurate. Upon Mr. Stengel contacting Dr. Kimmel's office, he was told, no records were requested. Eva DeVaughn is not a physician, rather an intervention specialist who works with the domestic violence group called DOVE. It should be noted, DOVE is a program for high-danger victims. Also working with DOVE are Officer Darren Kelly, a domestic violence coordinator from the Franklin precinct, and the one Miss Zaleski said referred her there. Not the court order, mind you. Officer Kelly is also violated by Miss Zaleski, as can be seen in false police reports, such as this one, for example. Keep in mind, Mr. Stengel's research, inside the minds of evil psychosis. And puzzles, inside of puzzles, inside of puzzles, each with many puzzle pieces. And Mr. Stengel teaching what he calls concentration. Unlike the game you may be familiar with, such as finding the matching pieces. This game relates to the many cons, where you find the same question or subject and connect the mismatches. This is fully dissected in the timeline, where it is pretty lengthy. However, for this presentation, it's worth a few notes, as Miss Siliski attempts to backdate history from the night before. This is in regards to Mr. Stengel's older son, Scott, and her allegations of assault. Officer Kelly's false and fraudulent police report, paid for by the taxpayers, notes.
On December 8, 2010, at approximately 10:30 hours, Officer Kelly, ID number 3704, responded to Garrison Forest School, and met with Susie Stengel. Upon arrival, Officer Kelly met with Mrs. Stengel in a private office, and observed Mrs. Stengel to be upset.
It also notes.
On December 7, 2010.
And notes.
Hard drive.
And notes.
At that time, Officer Kelly did not see any injuries to Mrs. Stengel's forearm.
Note, this is the super short, dissecting version. 1. Miss Siliski made no mention to Officer Miller the night before. After all, why bother when there are actual witnesses there? You know, with real, personal knowledge. 2. Miss Siliski uses Garrison Forest School as her abuse background, and her personal conference room. Why go to the police station when you can abuse a school for their background? 3.
And observed Mrs. Stengel to be upset.
Just not when it allegedly occurred. Apparently, too upset to mention it. And yet another problem this victim has with the videos.
Going here on my hand. Maya, what happened?
You kept fooling me.
Please, just stop. Yeah, stop grilling her.
We know you were.
Where do you want to go?
I'm going to Kelly Weinberg.
Let's go.
All right. Sir, where do you want to go?
Stay here.
Okay, let's stay here. Let's
4.
Hard drive.
Yet the following day, it morphed into Psych 40.
Scott physically assaulted her.
Note, physically assaulted her. How? Psych 41.
By grabbing her arms, while she was holding a computer monitor.
Note, now. Computer monitor? 5.
At that time, Officer Kelly did not see any injuries to Mrs. Stengel's forearm.
Note, that's because the injuries can only be seen through the telephone, where witnesses appear with personal knowledge. Now, if Miss Siliski was black and had 2 marijuana joints, she would be arrested and thrown in jail. That's if she wasn't already shot. Note, this is very important to understand for 2 reasons. While Mr. Stengel was falsely incarcerated, one of his cellmates, Darren, a black kid, 26 at the time, was very bright and articulate. He also had lots of books in the cell. Only 11 credits from his associate's degree, as Mr. Stengel looked out the window and can see Towson University. He asked Darren, why not get your associates while you're in here watching paint dry? He said,
they only allow up to a GED, nothing further.
An equivalent to a high school diploma, which he already surpassed. A captive audience, forced to watch paint dry, and forced to not advance in society. Mr. Stengel asked him, why do the blacks run when they see the police? It makes you look guilty. His response was more than disturbing. He said,
because, regardless of anything at all, if any police is coming towards you, it can't be good. It's not to ask you a question. You're going to jail. And, the only chance you have, for that not to happen, is to run. Just run.
Also important to note, Mr. Stengel's research also answers the question, why are there so many problems with police throughout the entire country? The short answer is, the estimated rate of unconscionables is at 4% of the population. However, certain industries have a higher rate, such as the police, such as attorneys and the legal industry, the psychology industry, and there are others. Once you learn just 2 pieces of the many designed, such as 1. How to quantify, which requires math. Not using a calculator, but needs to be done in your head. And most people suck at math. Which Mr. Stengel, who is math-oriented, will tell you, as he told teachers years ago. Get rid of the calculators. And never, ever, advance anyone in math, according to their age or grade. Once anyone falls behind in math, they are screwed for life. Every decision, in any area, you will ever make, comes down to calculations. 2. Consolidate. You will learn to remove all of the distracting backgrounds, and focus only on the actions, which are more often than not identical. Therefore, for example, you will better understand what you are really looking at, and not the garbage, which also answers many questions, such as, why does the used car salesman have such a bad reputation? And the biggest of all, politicians. Why such a bad stigma with politicians? Because the rate is way over 4%. And like Miss Silisky, can lie, cheat, steal, use, abuse, and whatever, and it never bothers them, nor will they confess to it. There is only one qualification for putting anyone in any position of power. Just one. Do they have a conscience? This concept and reality is unknown, let alone used, because without a conscience, they are by default pathological liars. What's the difference what they promise? Because without a conscience, it's not that they don't give a rat's ass about you. Rather, they can't. They don't have the ability to give a rat's ass about anyone, including their own children. And it never bothers them. Do they have a conscience? That's the front door, whether advising your child on who to marry or not, or a possible business partner. Regardless, that must be the front door. They are all not attacking Mr. Stengel and abusing so many to assist because of anything Mr. Stengel did. Rather, what Mr. Stengel discovered. Then, to make matters worse for them, he even created tools for the average person. Tools for prevention. Prevention. A word that does not even exist in the entire psychology industry. Okay, let's continue. Officer Amy Rice, a domestic violence coordinator from the Pikesville precinct. Officer Rice can also be seen on false police reports. All of the police reports are false, such as the one from Dr. Sean Costello-Woolley, we partially dissected. After all, what can be more exciting than abusing, either directly or conning others to abuse those trained in abuse, and being paid to protect those being abused? Apparently, they can't protect themselves. Trained in the psychology of abuse, however, the experts that specialize in that very field are easily conned by these types. It's not a bad thing. They simply don't know. As far as the public is concerned, will all those conned to abuse others stay the course and not admit to being conned themselves, therefore leaving the public as the unsuspecting, easy targets? Or hold those accountable for so many egregious crimes? That answer will become apparent. And, after being abused, to abuse so many, including Mr. Stengel and his children, will any of them ask Mr. Stengel for some assistance in what for them all is the unknown? Hannah, a Jewish women's abuse organization, whose executive director is Nancy Aiken, who was conned to file fraudulent criminal charges against Mr. Stengel, where he was falsely incarcerated, until the state was provided a sampling of Miss Alesky's career-long psychotic and evil behaviors and crimes, local, state and federal. Even though Mr. Stengel provided an enormous amount of crimes by Miss Silisky, 3 DVDs, full, and refused to do anything. The Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence, whose members include Audrey Burgeon and Ann Myers, who is the manager and nurse from the Northwest Hospital Dove program, which you just witnessed the abuses waged upon. Also working with the Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence are others from Hannah, which includes Nancy Aiken, all of which are systematically abused and violated to abuse and victimize the public, including schools, federal agencies, police, and many police departments, the sheriff's department, the courts, teachers, children, religious leaders and institutions, the taxpayers, and many others. That's the short list. Important to note, the Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence vice chairperson is Jill Pickett Savage, who is an assistant state's attorney of Maryland, and works under Scott D. Schellenberger, where Ms. Savage stated that Hannah was the facilitator, and Miss Silisky magically disappeared from the state's case, which Scott D. Schellenberger and Jill Pickett Savage then made Hana, a Jewish women's abuse organization, responsible for the insane number of abuses to many Jews. So abused and systematically brainwashed, when they surrendered their own First Amendment rights, which signed letters were forwarded in court by Jill Pickett Savage. That takes care of Psych number 1 to number 45. Note, this concludes that Major Con, by Ms. Susan Silisky, all known by the rest of the crime ring. Even more interesting, 17 pages are missing, from Northwest Hospital, Dove, regarding Miss Silisky. Also interesting, what else was going on during the time Miss Silisky was at Northwest Hospital? Let's take a look. December the 9th, 2010, at 9:21 p.m., apparently in the middle of Miss Silisky's evaluation, and while conning Eva DeVaughn as the victim, Miss Silisky had conned what she calls a friend, Sarah Blattner, who was living in Oregon for years, and before Oregon, lived in Atlanta, and before Atlanta, lived in Philadelphia, and before Philadelphia, lived in Baltimore. In all, it was about 10 years since living in Baltimore and before her email on this night, to Miss Silisky's attorney. In fact, they still reside in Oregon. Sarah Blattner states, his cameras alone speak volumes, and she is Susie's closest friend. Same bullshit Silisky tells everyone. After all, a best friend is easier to con and manipulate. Also suggested the House of Ruth, a women's abuse shelter, but Susan was afraid. Huh? And states Mr. Stengel was mentally abusive for years. Long story short, another phone witness with first-hand knowledge. And like the other deluded victims, if you remove Miss Silisky from the picture, Sarah Blattner, her husband Mark, and Mr. Stengel got along very well. Never once had any problem. Until Sarah receives her directions from her psychotic cult leader. The same is true with the Weinbergs and the rest. Okay, here we go. Before we get to Sarah Blattner's email, let's allow Miss Silisky to explain what you were just informed about, and just another reason the cameras was such a problem.
They think you're psychic. They think you're crazy, okay? They know you're crazy. They've been listening to the stories I've been telling them. They know you're nuts. They think you're psychic. They think you're crazy, okay? They know you're crazy. They've been listening to the stories I've been telling them. They know you're nuts.
Did someone ask about personal knowledge? During the December 7, 2010 trial, actual transcript, but not actual voice. On page number 65. Betsy R. Stryker testifies against Alex and Maya.
The clerk, please have a seat. Just state your full name and spell your last name.
Betsy R. Stryker. Oestricher.
Page number 66.
Question.
And did you have occasion to see Ms. Stengel in May of 2010, at either Maroon and White Day at Boys Latin or thereabouts?
Yes.
And within a period of time around that time, what, if anything, unusual did you see?
She had bruises on her arm.
And did you have any personal knowledge of how those bruises came to be on her arm?
Yes, I do.
And what do you know?
She told me that.
Mr. Tully.
Objection.
The court, strike that. The witness.
I'm sorry.
By Ms. Rosenberg. Question.
Anything, personal knowledge.
Oh?
The court, personal knowledge is, did you witness how it happened?
No, I did not.
Note, welcome to the...
I'm a member of the, I've been conned, manipulated, and played like a fool, by Susan Silisky, Members Club.
Okay. Now we are ready. Fact of the matter is, Sarah is a nice person, simply conned by evil. When Sarah lived in Baltimore, she and Mr. Stengel got along very well. Like everyone that has been conned and manipulated. If any are asked, prior to November the 29th, 2010, if they ever had a problem with Mr. Stengel, not one will say yes. Not one of them. Until they were told they have a problem. And like well-programmed drone and cult members, they marched in line. 3 hours later, now December the 10th, 2010, at 12:27 a.m., Sarah Blattner blasts an email to many people. Sarah Blattner under direction notes, the attorney's letter she just sent is attached, and states,
I fear for her safety, her children, and all their well-being. I have witnessed the mental abuse that she has undergone for many years. We talk almost every day.
8 a.m., phone witness. Note, received via subpoena, 9 months later. From sblattner@comcast.net to Ellen Rosenberg, PA@yahoo.com. Sent Thursday, December the 9th, 2010 at 9:21 p.m. Subject: Susie Siliski Stengel needs help. New turn of events.
Dear Ms. Rosenberg, I do not know if you are aware that Susie was picked up by the police this evening and taken for psychological evaluation. Her husband turned her in for being either possibly suicidal or homicidal, which is the only reason someone can be taken against their will to a psych ward. I assure you that her husband is absolutely capable of calculating any scenario and setting her up in a variety of ways. His cameras alone speak volumes about his character and behavior. As Susie's closest friend, I feel helpless being 3,000 miles away. I am concerned for the welfare of her children and for her tremendously. I was pushing her to call Hannah and the House of Ruth over Thanksgiving. She did make a call, but the House of Ruth did not call her back. She was afraid to follow up with them. I know that you must see intense cases all the time. I do not know if you are truly aware of the depth to which her husband has been mentally abusing her for years. I do not know what resources would help Susie, but you must have some contacts. She truly needs counsel with someone who can help her through this quagmire of mental abuse and calculating tactics. I think everyone is grossly underestimating her husband. I am sure this is a bit much for an email, but I can't help but throw in my 2 cents at this stage in the game. I am absolutely shocked over the turn of events this evening. Best regards, Sarah Blattner.
Even more shocking is Sarah's ability to write an email at 9:21 p.m. detailing events which hadn't taken place yet, according to Miss Siliski's sworn testimony. Sarah's email is time-stamped 1 hour and 9 minutes before Miss Siliski swears the police arrived at the Weinberg compound. Okay, enough for that quick reality tour. Let's continue. From sblattner@comcast.net. Sent Friday, December the 10th, 2010 at 12:27 a.m. to Michael Barrison, Catherine Barrison, Sean Costello, Catherine Stephens, Betsy and David R. Stryker, Sarah Blattner, Scott Kirkin, Jeff Basic, CC, Rachel Rappaport Simons. Subject: Forward, Susie Siliski Stengel.
Dear friends of Susie, I am sending you a copy of this email, which I composed this evening to Susie's lawyer. Being in Oregon, I have very little access to local resources that can help Susie. I know that you will take some time to think about who can help Susie navigate this new turn of events, and the future quagmire that she will no doubt be challenged by. I fear for her safety, her children, and all their well-being. I have witnessed the mental abuse that she has undergone for many years. We talk almost every day, and I can tell you that things have gotten to a very scary level for her. Best regards, Sarah Blattner.
Dear Sarah Blattner, you have witnessed so many things from 3,000 miles away. Really. Because you sound like a parrot. One very foolish parrot. One very conned parrot. One very manipulated parrot. One very brainwashed parrot. Your email states,
I feel helpless being 3,000 miles away.
You're not helpless. You have completed your given task. The distance is irrelevant. Just as it is with all of your witnessing. The only thing you have actually witnessed is a psychopath telling you what you witnessed, which is confirmed by your repeating it. That considers if Miss Siliski even advised you of what you witnessed. Because, from 3,000 miles away, you, Sarah Blattner, are not only a witness, but as documented in her sworn interrogatories, you have personal knowledge. And there are more of these. The only question for you, Sarah, is this. Did you know Miss Siliski was using your name in sworn documents, or any documents, such as this? Although Miss Siliski calls you, and uses the word, friend, the actual word for extremely high-level unconscionables is inventory. Inventory, to gather more inventory. After all, look at all the people with personal knowledge. This is called identity theft, and identity fraud. What you now have personal knowledge of is, you are the victim, not Miss Siliski. Miss Siliski is a predator. An evil predator. A dangerous predator. First, we will address one of your noted concerns. You stated,
I fear for her safety, her children, and all their well-being.
Alex and I appreciate your concerns, but not your actions. Now, if you could get them away from your friend, they would tell you a different story. However, let's allow Miss Siliski herself address your concern for the children. Because, after her first fraudulent protective order, and 2 years later, to the day, on November the 29th, 2012, your friend stated.
I'll follow up with one simple question and we can go into another subject. The point in time that you left Alex, Mr. Stengel, were you concerned for Alex and his safety?
No, I was concerned for me.
Okay.
However, if we put all of that aside, only one of Miss Zaleski's statements, excuse me, wink, wink, your ridiculous statements needs to be considered to qualify for insanity and delusion. Your email, which Miss Zaleski verbalized, I'm throwing you a bone here, Sarah, take it. Your email states,
I was pushing her to call Hannah and the House of Ruth over Thanksgiving. She did make a call, but the House of Ruth did not call her back. She was afraid to follow up with them.
Sarah, they didn't call her back. Really? And that makes any sense to you whatsoever? That's what they do. That's why they exist. Even more ridiculous is,
she was afraid to follow up with them.
That also makes any sense to you. Was the House of Ruth going to abuse her as well? Just so we are clear, Miss Zaleski, the victim, was not afraid to call them in the first place, but was afraid to call them back. Is that the bridge you were sold and bought? This can go on for quite some time, so let's put an end to not Miss Zaleski's quagmire, but your quagmire. There is a very simple explanation as to why the House of Ruth never called Miss Zaleski back. The House phone records from November the 1st, 2010, through November the 30th, 2010, nor Miss Zaleski's cell phone records from November the 10th, 2010, through December the 1st, 2010, 13 pages, which covers Thanksgiving, shows no calls to the House of Ruth. Their 24-hour hotline number is 410-889-RUTH 7884. In fact, there are no calls to any 889 exchange. For your information, there is no call to Hannah either. That hotline number is 410-234-0023. However, there is a call to you, Sarah, on Monday, November the 29th, 2010, at 1:39 a.m., lasting 80 minutes. That's 1 hour and 20 minutes, which ends just 1 minute before 3 a.m. Just 5 hours, 54 minutes after your speaking with Miss Zaleski, the court records stamped her first fraudulent protective order on November the 29th, 2010, at 8:53 a.m. Besides, here is what we do have the day after Thanksgiving. And, since Judge Alexander did talk about this, and, after all, your email does in fact say,
his cameras alone speak volumes.
First, a quick clip from Thanksgiving morning.
That's why. Okay, the
cop saying that.
The policeman came in here and he said to me, he goes, why are we, I don't even know why we're here. So I don't know. He's like, was there any abuse? I said, no.
What do you mean? That's how you say it? I don't understand.
I felt the exact same way she did. Like, I do not want to do what my parents did, and I will do the opposite of what my parents ever did. Okay? Of it, and I said to you, I have always been, and I have always tried to tell you I'm willing to do anything to slice this cat and fix it and put it back in a place that works for everybody.
Your Thanksgiving was fine. But it wasn't inclusive. You didn't make it inclusive. Your Thanksgiving was fine, but it wasn't inclusive. You didn't make it inclusive.
Just not, according to those with personal knowledge, such as her nephew Matthew Zaleski. Nearly 2 years later, on October the 25th, 2012, comes this.
Thank you. On November 25th, 2010, did you receive a call?
Yes. Objection. Overruled. I don't know where this is going yet. So November 25th, 2010, he received a call, okay?
And who was the call from?
Susie Zaleski.
And what was her demeanor during that call?
Judge, again. Overruled, she was upset. Next question.
What? Very upset or just a little upset?
She was crying. She was upset.
She was crying. And subsequent to that, you came to the house, correct?
Yes.
And when you got to the house, it was a couple hours later, was there anything going on, any physical stuff, any actions.
Objections, leading the witnesses.
Sustained, you're leading.
Told you about what leading is.
What was going on at the house when you got there?
You were cooking dinner with Alex. It seemed like there was a little bit of tension between you two, but there was no arguing or no physical.
Okay.
No physical what, sir? They weren't being physical with each other. They weren't hitting each other or in each other's face. There was a little bit of tension.
A little bit of tension. Next question. And was Mrs. Stengel crying when you got to the house?
No.
Okay. But when she talked on the phone, she was crying?
Yes.
Okay.
Your Thanksgiving was fine, but it wasn't inclusive. You didn't make it inclusive.
Yet 11 days after this confession, and on December the 7th, 2010, Miss Silisky drags her nephew into court regarding this very staged scam. Actual transcript, but not actual audio.
The witness.
Matthew Robert Silisky.
Matthew, sorry, you are related to Ms. Stengel, is that correct?
Yes.
How are you related to her?
Nephew. I'm her nephew.
I am sorry, okay. You are her nephew. And you are presently serving in the armed forces, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what branch?
United States Marine Corps.
And how often have you had occasion to see your aunt say in the last couple of years?
Quite often. We talk almost every day and I see her probably every 2 weeks.
And do you have a relationship with Mr. Stengel as well?
He's my uncle.
On Thanksgiving of 2010, you came to be at the Stengel residence, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's continue.
I do what with you?
He did this and he did that, and she did this and she did that. And then you bring it back up and you come up and you have these grandiose conversations in the middle of the night and emails and whatever about this happened and that happened and I don't know how you think and why'd you do it this way and why'd you do it that way and you don't have any room for forgiveness with me at all. Matt and Alex come from the product Kim and Bobby. Matt and Alex meaning his girlfriend. Come from the product of Kim and Bobby, an addict who chose to marry a non-Jew. Kim is wonderful, but she is not Jewish and she is from the other side of our world. Scott is heading down a similar path by dating Jonna. Although you don't see it now, I can tell you I've lived it. Although I don't think he will marry her, but I do think if he does, you should brace yourself for the Christmas tree in his house and the Easter egg hunts at his house. Because like Amanda marrying Ian, okay? You don't know what Ian's really like on the inside. Just see his googly eyes, okay?
No idea what a man's like. No clue.
I do. Okay, Matt may come across a bit gruff and clean.
He doesn't come across gruff to you. He really doesn't. I'm not talking about.
She said, everything is converged. She says, but she has no control over it. Mark controls every piece of their finances. He moves money around like the shell game. He orders their credit cards. He closes credit cards on her. She'll be at a store and it'll be closed. And she won't even know, and he will open a new one and say, oh, I want to have frequent flyer miles on Continental, and he won't even discuss it with her, and, so he does those things, okay? It makes her nuts.
Yeah.
Okay, so that wouldn't work for me either. I want a partnership with somebody who's going to partner.
What partner do you? What does partner mean?
Make decisions together, discuss it before it happens. Even if you don't like the outcome, work towards a common goal. I mean,
But besides that,
now there's nothing more besides that.
I don't know how you get.
That is, to me, the core fundamental problem for me personally, Susie Stengel.
I don't discuss purchases with you.
You don't.
That's your core fundamental problem about all this stuff.
No, you took one tiny piece out of that entire thing.
Tell me.
You took
I want to know.
Discussing purchases. I'm also talking about discussing, I'm talking everything, discussing education, discussing where we live, discussing renovations in the house, discussing core purchases, discussing
how we're paying bills, you know, like when it came to health insurance and me doing all this investigation and us working together. We worked together on creating a lesser plan for the health insurance. That to me was good. That was great.
Just 50 minutes later. And what about this?
Because I realize you're on the board! You're on the fucking board! You're an asshole! On the board! You fucking asshole! I hate you! I don't want to be your fucking board! You're gonna fucking beat the shit out of you!
Dr. Alan Kimmel, Ms. Steggles' medical doctor, aware of Ms. Steggles' mental health issues.
And just 2 hours 25 minutes after that.
We go see Boulevard at Hotel.
Okay. The only PG-13, I mean not PG-13, the only PG movie that's not PG-13 that they could see. And it looks cute. It's kind of like that Elastigirl, the Incredibles, kind of has like the same kind of... Maya?
And what about this?
Intentional? If it was something I said or did or didn't do, I have no idea how we got where we are. I have no idea or memory of it. None. Now I can pick out things that have happened, but I did sit there today and think to myself, I really wish he was here. And I wish we were holding hands and we were watching the movie. Doesn't matter what I wish. Intentional? If it was something I said or did or didn't do, I have no idea how we got where we are. I have no idea or memory of it.
Contains an entry for watching the Truth About Susie video. There should be no video. No one should be watching the video.
Abusing schools, teachers, and rabbis, all authorized and approved by this group and others.
There should be no video. No one should be watching the video.
Abusing minor children, all authorized and approved by this group and others.
There should be no video. No one should be watching the video.
Abusing society and the taxpayers, all authorized and approved by this group and others.
There should be no video. No one should be watching the video.
Abusing Sarah and Mark Blackner, all authorized and approved by this group and others.
There should be no video. No one should be watching the video.
Sarah, Ms. Siliski ever mention, while she was filing and swearing to this fraudulent order with 75 perjurious statements, Mr. Stengel was meeting with a mediator. Because it was really about hiding her years of so many crimes.
I'll tell you what. I'll give you the cameras when you give me my hard drive off the servers. I'll tell you what. I'll give you the cameras when you give me my hard drive off the servers.
Find Mark 7 on whatever computer is Mark 7.
I think Mark 7 is his laptop, which he has with him.
Well, then he's got it.
But he's got to have backups on stuff, right?
Right, that's what I'm assuming is on these drives here, and also that window.
Nearly 2 years later, and on October the 25th, 2012, on page number 101, comes this.
I have a backup hard drive.
The backup home on the home server.
No, I would not know. How did it get there?
Because it automatically.
You know you have a backup hard drive?
Not till now.
Okay, here you go. Next question.
There should be no video. No one should be watching the video.
Abusing abuse organizations, all authorized and approved by this group and others. And always, always remember, as it relates to abuse found on Miss Sileski's hard drive backup, did this victim ever provide these pre-planned, designed photos taken by her nearly a year earlier, while Mr. Stengel was out with Alex and Maya on Saturday morning, January the 16th, 2010, at 9:27 a.m. Photos stored on her hard drive, then modified 8 months later and kept on her hard drive. Well, Sarah, did your so-called friend ever show you these? Nancy Aiken from Hana, what about you? Eva from the Dove program, what about you? Anyone from the House of Ruth? No.
She was afraid of them.
With over a dozen conned in the psychology field, some of the others are Dr. Sean Costello-Woolley, Ina Basefeld, Kelly Weinberg, Sherelle Flowers from Boys Latin School, Rachel Rappaport-Simon, Lauren Shervitz, Peggy Kolodny, Laurie Hollander, Janet Schatzman, and others. Any one of you? Scott D. Schellenberger, the Maryland State's Attorney, and Jill Pickett Savage, the State's Assistant Attorney, what about you? With Miss Sileski's constant claims of stalking, harassment, and whatever else she is confessing to as her own actions. Allegations equals confessions. Yes, stalking. Multiple times. Once with a confession, and we have a photo, as will be learned in the timeline. Did Miss Sileski provide any of these? How about just one? However, the photos were provided to Leon W. Berg, Dr. Catherine Killeen, Judge Judith Cienza, Scott D. Schellenberger, and others. Except for one small detail. Not by this abused victim, rather, provided by Mr. Stengel. Yes, provided to them all. Dear abuse organizations, is it not unusual the alleged victim would not provide these to any of them? Is it not even more unusual the alleged abuser is providing these photos? Is it not unusual Miss Sileski, aka the victim, Bradford G. Wykani, Leon W. Berg, or Dr. Catherine Killeen never made any mention of the photos? Is it not unusual this crime ring manufactures fraudulent gag orders so nobody can be shown the photos? Does anyone have anything to say to all of your victims?
Contrary to what Mr. Rudo said, very little of my perspective on this case had much to do with what Ms. Sileski said, or didn't say, or did, or didn't.
Believe it or not, this coming is in super speed mode, passing dozens of psychotic actions over the time frames. But their victims will have a small sampling of what their handlers all knew, including the state of Maryland, Scott D. Schellenberger, John P. Cox and Jill Pickett Savage. And still know today. On November the 29th, 2010, Miss Sileski files her first fraudulent protective order. 8 days later, on December the 7th, 2010, Ms. Susan Sileski, Sally Sileski, Betsy R. Stryker, and Kelly Weinberg all testified against Alex and Maya. Miss Sileski loses that trial. A week later, Mr. Carney begins his reign of fraud. A mere 2 weeks after Mr. Carney began, and on December the 29th, 2010, Miss Sileski confesses to their pre-designed fraud.
You videotaping? Hi, he's a crook. Can't wait till you end up in prison. 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 Can't wait till you end up in prison.
1 week later, Mr. Berg and Dr. Killeen begin their reign of frauds. Then, a year of crimes, frauds, and abuses, to the children, their schools, and everyone. Many, many things. Such as obstructing justice. Alex twice reports to his school, being beaten up, such as thrown against a wall, hit in the back of his head, in his stomach, and much more, and refused Alex to call his father, or anyone, a prisoner, in hell. The school does not report either case to authorities. The first time was on June the 2nd, 2011, where Mr. Berg was called and shut it down, therefore demanding Alex continue to be abused, and on his own. On September the 29th, 2011, Alex wrote his letter to his mother, stating he did not want to live with her, period. Alex returns to his mother's after school on Monday, October the 3rd, 2011, and is beaten up. Mr. Stengel is unable to contact either child. The following day, on October the 4th, 2011, Alex reports the abuse to his school. Boys' Latin school failed to protect Alex, a 10-year-old student, by not reporting the abuses to authorities, yet again. Instead calls Mr. Leon W. Berg, who sends Dr. Catherine Killeen to the school, to shut it down, leaving Alex with no place to go for help. That same day, Mr. Stengel, still unable to contact either child, calls police, as noted in that police report. On October the 5th, 2011, Maya confesses to stealing the audio recorder, owned by her older brother Scott, and lent to Alex for his audio journal. Scott calls the police to report the incident. Ms. Siliski throws Maya under the bus, as noted in that police report. Now, they are all very desperate, and set their sights on the upcoming Boys Latin School's annual festival, just 10 days away. Okay, let's clear out the area. One being, the October the 15th, 2011, Boys Latin School, Fall Fest event, staged, and pre-planned, scam. The headmaster, Mr. Christopher Post, targeted for nearly a year, bans Mr. Stengel from the school, without ever asking him, even one question, such as,
"What's your side of the story?"
On November the 15th or 16th, since with Miss Siliski, nothing ever matches, Miss Siliski filed her second fraudulent protective order. The trial took place on November the 23rd, 2011, where Miss Siliski provided her altered evidence, under oath, not realized by Mr. Stengel until after the trial. The same trial, Alison Meister Friedman was conned, and committed multiple counts of perjury, also swearing to what was not even possible. Alex and Maya go from 50/50 custody with their father, Sanity, to only 1.5 days, every 2 weeks. But don't worry, that didn't last long. November the 29th, 2011, Mr. Stengel brought Miss Siliski's altered evidence, as instructed by the judge's chambers, to the state's attorney. Mr. Stengel was told anyone could have altered it. He was told to come back if he has anything more concrete. 4.5 months later, at the appeal to that altered evidence trial, Miss Siliski confessed to altering the evidence, in cooperation with her attorney, Bradford G. Wykani. Mr. Stengel brought the transcript, complete with confession, to the state's attorney. Apparently, a confession was too concrete. Just 1 week after the altered evidence trial, on November the 23rd, 2011, comes their nearly a year-long, pre-planned, pre-designed, child custody scam, on December the 1st, 2011, where Robert Wayne Lazaro, as planned, bails out. After Mr. Leon Fraudberg, and Dr. Catherine Fraudlein, complete another stage of their agenda, Alex and Maya lose all communications with their father. Just 6 weeks later, and on January the 18th, 2012, Miss Siliski files what would be her first fraudulent criminal charges, where the main allegation was not even possible. However, Scott D. Schellenberger happily accepted those charges. Zero evidence provided. Obviously, their collective, conspiratory, pre-designed fraudulent prison scam was put into action. After all, with the mountains of evidence organized and provided, what other options does this crime ring have? On April the 12th, 2012, the appeal to the altered evidence trial, with Judge Timothy Martin. Even with confessions to altering evidence, which gave rise to this appeal, loads of perjury while on the stand, and one directly to Judge Martin, which he confirms right there. In his decision he states, he believes everything from Miss Siliski, and doesn't believe a word from Mr. Stengel, and recuses himself from Mr. Stengel's cases. However, that scam was to make room for Judge Judith Cienza. Afterwards, more crimes, more collusion, more fraud and abuses. On May the 1st, 2012, they ran their second custody scam, to circumvent Robert Wayne Lazaro, having to cross-examine Dr. Killeen, on May 2nd, and May 3rd, trial date set, from her December the 1st, 2011, fraud and psychologist testimony. They ran many scams, as 5 months went by, with Alex and Maya having zero communications with their father. Then, they ran their supervised visitation scam. During the 5 months, they ran other scams, like the first fraudulent criminal filing, back on January the 18th, 2012, and much more. Much more. On September the 28th, 2012, Mr. Stengel files to have the fraudulent protective order rescinded, which was going to expire in 2 weeks. That landed in Judge Discienza's trash can. However, on October the 9th, 2012, or October the 10th, 2012, as nothing ever matches, Miss Siliski files to extend that fraudulent order, claiming fear of gun bullshit. And on October the 25th, 2012, was that trial. Alison Meister Friedman is served a subpoena for the trial, and tells the person serving her she is not coming. She ignores that subpoena, and does not show up, even writing a letter to Judge Discienza, stating the subpoena itself is her being harassed by Mr. Stengel, and therefore asking for the subpoena to be quashed. The date of that letter? October the 25th, 2012. The day of the trial. Huh? Mr. Carney, an extremely high-level unconscionable, like Miss Siliski and the other research subjects, has no problem throwing John Friedman to the wolves, and confirms this crime.
Related to the divorce case, and there's one in this particular case, there's a woman by the name of Friedman whose husband is a lawyer, pardon me, who is spoken with me about their desire to not be here, but there's a subpoena that he, as a member of the Office of the Court, he can't ignore that, obviously. It's pure and simple harassment on the part of Mr. Stengel.
Mr. Bradford G. Y. Carney, conning, bullying, and manipulating people to commit perjury, is not harassment. Wanting to question those perjurers, therefore, exposing Mr. Carney, now, that's harassment. Welcome to Inside the Minds of Evil Psychosis. All authorized. After all, Alison Meister Friedman was hoodwinked and played like a fool by Miss Siliski and Mr. Carney, then involved in the Boys Latin Fall Fist scam. Then, 1 month later, committed multiple counts of perjury on November the 23rd, 2011, where Alex and Maya lost all but 1.5 days every 2 weeks with their father and sanity. Alison was also on the board of HANA, surely making conning that abuse organization easier. Now, nearly a year later, and Alison Meister Friedman is the victim. Sound familiar? Sound familiar? Alison has her own presentation. Due to her many actions, she is in many presentations. However, Miss Siliski's niece Brandy and nephew Matthew followed the law and showed up. Long story short, neither of them wished to have any relationship with their aunt, Miss Siliski, whatsoever. Brandy testified. Her aunt called her on the phone, told her niece, Mr. Stengel physically abused her. Then, Miss Siliski called her back, and asked Brandy if she filed a police report. No kidding. Brandy's husband testified. Miss Siliski left a message asking him to escort her to Alex's baseball games, as security. Danger, danger. He ignored her message. Even though, due to Miss Siliski making up bullshit about what Mr. Stengel said to her, Mr. Stengel refused to speak even one word to Miss Siliski since June or July 2011. Not one word. More crimes. More collusion. More fraud and abuses. In July 2013, Mr. Stengel files multiple complaints with the Attorney Grievance Commission of Maryland, each complaint providing evidence of the many crimes, including confessions. The first, where Mr. Berg responds with his 50 pages of lies to the commission. That corrupt oversight commission refuses to even investigate their buddies. The public is on their own, while the predators are authorized to abuse and commit crimes at will. Mr. Stengel continued filing complaints against Mr. Berg, Mr. Carney, Mr. Lazaro, and other attorneys who committed unethical acts, simply tagging them all as the criminals they are. September the 18th, 2013, Judge Discienza completed yet another one of her crime rings, pre-planned frauds.
I went through the bills. I went through them line by line. I studied the descriptions of the work performed, and I considered the rates charged. Part of that review, frankly, was with an eye to determining who was actually driving the litigation. And of course, for that, I only have the pleadings filed and the descriptions delineated in the bills themselves. I do find the hourly rates charged to be fair. I find the time allotted for the tasks performed reasonable. I find that of the almost $200,000 in legal bills, much is attributable to inappropriate actions on the part of Mr. Stengel.
All authorized. Then, this unconscionable crime ring partner, on the take, slams Mr. Stengel with over $179,000 of their counterfeit orders and fraud bills, as documented in their very own bills, laced with conspiracy and collusion to commit intentional fraud and abuses to minor children, entire communities, and society. All authorized. That obvious fraud comes after Mr. Bradford G. Carney, on the final day of trial, November the 30th, 2012, confesses.
As the court pointed out earlier, it's a whole lot more expensive to lie than it is to tell the truth. Because as Mr. Fetter said, to ferret out the lie, you've got to do more work. And the more work I did, the more frustrating it became because I just kept coming up empty. I just kept coming up empty. I just kept coming up empty. I just kept coming up empty.
All authorized. Mr. Carney would like to remind everyone what he told Enza the day before.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I'm loaded up on Valium and Oxycontin. It's really good stuff. It's great. It doesn't work. That's what I'm taking.
All authorized.
Wait for the experts. Which experts are you referring to?
I don't know.
It's a
future thing. I'm just a gatherer of information.
You know, I was upset because of all these things that were occurring to my children, right? So, that coupled with OCD, you know, I was just putting evidence together. That's what I was doing.
Well, I think she would say that you won't stop.
Well, I can prove, see, but that's the difference.
That's where we are with this.
Right, that's the difference. I have evidence and she doesn't.
I'm just a gatherer of information.
I was just putting evidence together. I have evidence and she doesn't.
Nor do you.
I have evidence and she doesn't.
Nor do any of you. After that, obvious fraud, sham, and circus. And a month later, on October the 22nd, 2013, and yet again, on October the 29th, 2013, Mr. Stengel overloads the Maryland State's Attorney's Office with 3 DVDs, full of an insane amount of crimes, local, state and federal, including Miss Zaleski's first fraudulent criminal filing, the state accepted, showing it's not even possible, which the state, or anyone could have verified, in 5 minutes, and still can, along with several dozens of crimes, all with hard, solid evidence backing up each one. Included were thousands of transcript pages, loads of false sworn filings, dozens of presentations, dozens of video clips, many video confessions, sworn transcript confessions, and much more. Just a few days later, on November the 5th, 2013, Mr. Stengel receives this response from the Deputy State's Attorney, John P. Cox.
Office of the State's Attorneys, Baltimore County. Scott D. Schellenberger, State's Attorney. November 5, 2013, Dear Mr. Stengel, this office has investigated your complaint for perjury charges. We have reviewed all of the available evidence and, in the exercise of prosecutorial discretion, we are declining to file charges against Susan Zaleski. Sincerely, John P. Cox. Deputy State's Attorney. State's Attorney's Office.
Therefore, confirming. Crime pays. Dear John P. Cox, apparently, you are confused. Who said anything about perjury? The presentations alone show numerous criminal actions, local, state and federal. Some even involving others, committing serious crimes. Your slick willy attempt to pigeonhole what was provided as only perjury is pathetic. However, we can use your own words against you, as well, as there are over 2,000 documented counts of perjury. All complete bullshit. Like your letter. Prosecutorial discretion. Discretion. Because, from the victim's view, it's prosecutorial deception. From the victim's view, it's prosecutorial collusion. From the victim's view, it's prosecutorial corruption. From the victim's view, it's prosecutorial fraud. From the victim's view, it's prosecutorial abuse of power. Knowingly allowing the public to be preyed upon makes you a thug. Do your children know what you do to earn your paycheck for protecting the public in order to buy them all those gifts? Welcome to your legacy. Welcome to the list. Dear John P. Cox and Scott D. Schellenberger, now that we introduced your characters, or lack of, let's take a closer look. Your letter dated November the 5th, 2013, stated,
"We have reviewed all of the available evidence."
Really? 3 DVDs of criminal activity, spanning over a decade, all reviewed. Apparently, you are as trustworthy, honest, and filled with integrity and conscience as Miss Silisky and the crime ring you are protecting. What was on those 3 DVDs that your entire building could not have reviewed in the time frame? Curiously, it's the same exact knowingly fraudulent lies, done so with foreknowledge and malice, that the Attorney Grievance Commission of Maryland said, which is also meticulously documented. It's pretty clear. Maryland is a rogue state. Follow along. Warning, reality will no doubt be painful to criminals. So Mr. Cox and Mr. Schellenberger, you have been warned. However, not approved by the taxpayers. All authorized. It was not until after that sham and obvious fraud by the state did Mr. Stengel, in December 2013, begin to send out mailings to inform their many victims. They were in fact being used and abused to the detriment of Mr. Stengel's children, themselves, and their communities. All mailings went to politicians, the FBI, and others in authority. Even Scott D. Schellenberger himself. Even with only the small portions of parts of the timeline, it should clarify many things. 1. Mr. Stengel didn't all of a sudden start sending out mailings like some crazy person, as they claimed. 2. Mr. Stengel has always tried to protect his children, Alex and Maya. 3. Miss Silisky, in cooperation with this racketeering, extortion, child trafficking, and predatory crime ring, as only a few examples, along with the state of Maryland, in fact, did the opposite, by intentionally causing as much harm and damage to Alex and Maya with every passing day, and done so with foreknowledge and malice to cause as much harm as possible. 4. Mr. Stengel knew all along he was dealing with evil, psychotic villains, victimizing everyone in their paths. 5. Trapped rats, all trapped for years, in Mr. Stengel's meticulous documentation of all of their crimes against humanity. 6. Exposing them all. Their deepest, darkest secret. Not secrets. Like in plural. Just one secret. The secret, kept since they originally realized something was different. The secret not even disclosed to those closest to them. Not even to their friends, spouses, or their own children. They are unconscionables. They possess no conscience. Dead, on the inside. The mailings continued into the first quarter of 2014. Miss Silisky did not even receive one mailing, yet attempted to file charges with the commissioner, and was denied. Hannah filed for a protective order in the city of Baltimore, and was denied. Ms. Silisky then dragged Hannah to the county, where Old Faithful, Scott D. Schellenberger, again, happily accepted fraudulent criminal charges. On April the 4th, 2014, Mr. Stengel was first located, and to his surprise, had a warrant for his arrest. He was arrested, mugshots taken, fingerprinted, legs shackled, with his bad back, and all. From that county he was transported to Baltimore County, aka Covert County, and again, mugshots taken, fingerprinted, legs shackled, and it was April the 6th, 2014, before he arrived at his final destination, a new cement and steel home, where he was falsely incarcerated. A few days later, he was provided the first list provided to the state, which had Mr. Stengel falsely incarcerated. Over 140 names on that first list, including people from foreign countries. Eventually, Mr. Stengel was sent home on house arrest, with an ankle monitor, and had to report each week to the jail for urine/drug testing. Huh? And pay $75, then go straight home. This continued for months. On September the 4th, 2014, the state provided a state agreement with even more people and organizations involved, and against Mr. Stengel. Mr. Stengel knew, way back in early 2011, he was documenting psychotic and evil criminals, such that their great-grandchildren will want blood transfusions, removing any and all traces of any related connections. Also aware, his research data is all over the planet, and is never going away. ever. Mr. Stengel rejects the state's state offer, knowing it was simply another evil scam tactic to keep all of their victims, which they call witnesses, in their deluded and brainwashed state forever. Mr. Stengel was never going to allow that to happen to his children, or anyone, for that matter. Simply put, they screwed with the wrong father's kids. Mr. Stengel's original attorneys were afraid of these thugs and bullies, and tried to have him sign that state agreement. He told them to go jump in a lake. That's when Mr. Richard Karseski gets involved, and represents Mr. Stengel. On December the 19th, 2014, provides the state, and Jill Pickett Savage, with a 148-page package, containing just some samples of their star witness, Ms. Sileski's criminal career. Local, state and federal crimes, which included evidence with each crime. That package was less than 10% of what Mr. Stengel had already provided the state long before, as they continued authorizing and assisting this crime ring in the many crimes and abuses against everyone, with full knowledge and foreknowledge. All the while, using taxpayer dollars, millions of taxpayer dollars, to fund their crimes, frauds, child abuses, racketeering, extortion, child trafficking, and many other crimes and scams against the public and those very taxpayers. These crimes for years had long been provided to, and therefore authorized and approved, by the Oversight Commission, and originally by Governor Martin O'Malley. Also receiving these crimes, all authorized and approved by the fully informed Governor Larry Hogan. All authorized. After receiving Mr. Karseski's 148-page package, the state surrendered. It was a matter of waiting for the court date, January the 22nd, 2015, to put it on the record. During that time, and to make sure their victims never found out any truths, Miss Sileski and others conned many into surrendering their own First Amendment rights, which papers are signed and dated just a couple weeks after Jill Pickett Savage received Mr. Karseski's package. Therefore, going on an all-out, offensive attack to con and manipulate many people and organizations to prevent them from being informed of any truths, using their victims against their own best interest, and instead continue assisting their handlers and evil predators. On January the 22nd, 2015, Ms. Savage attempted to hand these signed criminally threatening letters to Mr. Stengel outside the courtroom. Mr. Stengel again rejects the state's offer, forcing Ms. Savage to do so in court and on the record. Therefore, forcing Jill Pickett Savage and the state of Maryland forward evidence of their own involvement of psychological warfare tactics waged on Maryland's own citizens, citizens of other states, and even Canada. Let's listen, along with the hundreds of victims, and allow Jill Pickett Savage's statement to the court regarding these very stream of events. Go on, Jill, whenever you're ready.
I think that we're going to be deficient in proving harassment charges because we were not able to notify Mr. Stengel that the people that were receiving these mailings didn't want the mailings. But since that time, HANA, the Jewish Advocacy Domestic Violence Group, has gotten involved, and 92 parties have reached out to them to say that they don't want contact with Mr. Stengel.
There you go. Not only is that complete bullshit and contradicts their own criminal filing, by which they had Mr. Stengel falsely and fraudulently incarcerated, but now Miss Sileski, the state's star witness, magically disappears, and HANA, the abused Jewish women's abuse organization, is thrown under the wheels of the fire-blazing bus as the facilitator of all these crimes to hundreds of victims, which includes themselves. Almost all criminally threatening letters to Mr. Stengel, where they surrendered their own First Amendment rights, were signed on January the 7th, 2015. Jill Savage states they reached out to HANA. Really, Jill? But not during the previous 4 years, but in those couple of weeks. Even the ones that are not Jewish, those from other states, and the one from Canada. Really, Jill Pickett Savage. Let's listen again, for all of your victims.
I think that we're going to be deficient in proving harassment charges because we were not able to notify Mr. Stengel that the people that were receiving these mailings didn't want the mailings. But since that time, HANA, the Jewish Advocacy Domestic Violence Group, has gotten involved, and 92 parties have reached out to them to say that they don't want contact with Mr. Stengel.
Really? Bullshit. 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 Nearly a full year later, and that's your story. It's 100% bullshit.
I think that we're going to be deficient in proving harassment charges because we were not able to notify Mr. Stengel that the people that were receiving these mailings didn't want the mailings.
Bullshit. Your false and fraudulent incarceration, using your fraudulent filing, containing 30 pages of fraud and deceit, itself proves your statement to be knowingly false.
Having fully investigated said case.
However, you didn't investigate anything, let alone fully investigate.
Having fully investigated said case. After a request to desist.
The key word is after. Now you are saying that was false.
Definition of desist. To stop doing something.
I think that we're going to be deficient in proving harassment charges because we were not able to notify Mr. Stengel.
Having fully investigated said case. After a request to desist.
The key word is after. Now you are saying that was false.
I think that we're going to be deficient in proving harassment charges because we were not able to notify Mr. Stengel.
There is more, there is always more. Even after this, there is a lot more. However, let's take a look at just one more. One of the 30 pages. That is Scott D. Schellenberger's signature, correct. That is Jill Pickett Savage's signature, correct. Another one of the 30 pages. That is Scott D. Schellenberger's signature, correct. That is Jill Pickett Savage's signature, correct. Another one of the 30 pages. That is Jill Pickett Savage's signature, correct. Who did Scott D. Schellenberger and Jill Pickett Savage sign their names to, that were going to testify against Mr. Stengel, to falsely go to prison for 5.5 years?
Witnesses. 1. Alexander Stengel. 2. Maya Stengel.
One more time.
Witnesses. 1. Alexander Stengel. 2. Maya Stengel.
Really? Scott D. Schellenberger? Really? Jill Pickett Savage? Really? Your frauds perpetrated on Mr. Stengel, his children, and entire communities, aren't enough for the unconscionables. Besides the obvious, any mother wants to have her 10 and 12-year-old children testify against their own father, by itself, says it all. The fact, it doesn't raise any flags for Mr. Scott D. Schellenberger, or Jill Pickett Savage, says it all as well. We add the fact, it's all fraud, assisted by the state of Maryland, themselves, so trapped in Mr. Stengel's documentations of the state's actions, and lack of actions, over several years, leaves the state with little options. Mr. Scott D. Schellenberger facilitates child abuse as seen. Who else might be on this witness list?
3. Susan Sileski. 4. Mark Dickel, Baltimore County Sheriff's Office. 5. Family Violence Representative.
Note, number 3. That would be your star witness, that magically disappeared. Number 4. That would be Deputy Sheriff Dickel, the one Miss Sileski lied to about the gun. Way back on November the 29th, 2010. Her first fraudulent protective order. Where this all began. Now she is conning Mr. Dickel. Number 5. That would be Hannah. Afterwards, they illegally had Mr. Stengel falsely arrested 2 more times. And illegally removed Mr. Stengel's First Amendment rights, without inviting him to defend them. All, simply to keep their hundreds of victims, remain in their deluded state. Let's listen to a hearing, on November the 16th, 2015, where Mr. Stengel was not, officially invited, as will be obvious, by Judge this Kathleen G. Cox's question. A bit strange, given this was in regards to First Amendment rights. Whenever you are ready, Ms. Cox.
How is it that you knew to be present here today? How is it that you knew to be present here today?
And an all-time favorite confession of fraud upon the court, by the court.
I'm going to live with the letter of the law. I'm going to live with the letter of the law. I'm going to live with the letter of the law.
Some of you may have thought that was the law. However, apparently, this Judge This has other options.
I'm going to live with the letter of the law. I'm going to live with the letter of the law. I'm going to live with the letter of the law. I'm going to live with the letter of the law.
All authorized. As you will learn, why after this day, Mr. Stengel was no longer permitted to be informed about any First Amendment court dates. as they held their secret hearings and trials as a crime ring, members-only club. All authorized. What about Judge this Kathleen G. Cox, who demanded the court fraud and not inform any victims what has been and still being done to them all? Mr. Stengel turns the tables on this Judge this.
It's about how people were manipulated and conned against myself and my children. Okay? And to this day, they still don't know. So these people want to leave these people, and there are hundreds of them, in a state of delusion. That's their attempt, to leave them in a state. Don't let the victims know, by the way, that they've been victimized by these people. And we're going to sign an order that you can't tell the victims that they're victims. Okay? And instead, we're going to brainwash them, and we're going to make them deluded, where they send me a letter threatening me criminal prosecution should I contact them. Now, I have one question for Your Honor. What would it take for you to sign anything to give away your own First Amendment right to receive information?
The question is pointless. Besides, the truth does not require so many witnesses, and so many with personal knowledge. Were these actions at weddings or festivals? For example, what else does Miss Sileski's over 80-year-old elderly Aunt Janet Schutzman not have personal knowledge of? Well, on June 15, 2011, she is conned for a $5,000 check noted for legal services, yet written to Miss Sileski, and the $5,000 lands in Miss Sileski's IRA. Years later, conned to assist in the false incarceration of Mr. Stengel, and to surrender her own First Amendment rights, so to not receive this information. The alienation game. Use them, abuse them, alienate them. Got the game? Rinse and repeat.
Target locked.
Anyone would have to be a fool to think anyone that would, and has on many occasions, thrown her own children under the bus, once even documented in a police report. One witnessed in this presentation, and many other times. But would not throw you or your children under a bus as well. Are you that fool? If Sarah or anyone has any doubt, she won't after being provided the Josh Lipsey story, unless she herself is an unconscionable. Evil, pure evil, has no boundaries. Everything and everyone is simply inventory. Period. There are no exceptions. Their life is a game of survivor. Get whatever you can, whenever you can, from wherever you can, however you can, as often as you can. Regardless. This is Josh, during the 2009 season. A really great kid, with a genetic, degenerative eye disease. At the time, in 2011, Josh was 10 years old, and was 80% blind. His older brother was over 95% blind. Mindy Lipsey still has no idea what the evil Sileski did to her and her son Josh. However, Mr. Stengel has it all meticulously documented, like all of their victims. We will be brief, as it is detailed in the timeline. Best if explained in a few email exchanges. From Mindy Lipsey. Sent, Wednesday, February the 16th, 2011, at 4:47 p.m. To Mark Stengel. Subject, baseball.
Hi Mark. Hope you're doing well. Are you signing Alex up for baseball? Are you coaching? I want to try and get special permission for Josh to play on Lute Herville's 9-10 league, but I'm not going to do it unless you're coaching. Let me know.
On Friday, February 18, 2011, at 11:38 a.m., Mindy Lipsey wrote,
Hi Scott. Annie from the rec office gave me your name and email, as I understand Brian won't be able to fulfill his duties as commissioner due to his military commitment. I'd like to share a short version of a story regarding my son, Josh Lipsey, who is currently 10 years old. Josh was born in March 2000, with a degenerative eye condition known as Stargardt disease. His favorite sport since he was 2 years old is baseball. He's been playing Little League since he was 5 years old. The eye condition Josh has leads to legal blindness. Mark Stegel has coached Josh for the past 5 years, and last year he coached Josh in the Lute-Herville 9-10 league. Mark understands Josh's condition, and knows how to utilize his skills in the field, while also understanding his limitations due to his vision. Mark is interested in coaching again, but his son will still be in the 9-10 league this year. I'm asking for special permission for my son to play again, under Mark's direction in the 9-10 league. His birthday is March the 16th, 2000, so it's a difference of 2 weeks that technically places Josh in the 11-12 league. This will be Josh's last year that he will be able to play, as his eye disease is degenerative. It would be a true gift for my son to have one more season to fulfill his dream. Is there an exception that the league can make on behalf of Josh, given these extenuating circumstances? I appreciate your consideration regarding this unique situation, and look forward to hearing back from you. My contact information is below in case you need to call me for more details. Thanks again, Medilipsy.
From Scott Shipley. Sent Friday, February 18, 2011, at 12:49 p.m. To Mark Stengel. Subject, regarding 9-10, baseball question. Mark, I want to be as diplomatic as I can with this question, but I want you to give me your honest answer, before I send this info off to the entire board for discussion. Do you think there is a safety concern, if this child were to play in the 11-12 age group? In other words, do you think this child would be put at any additional risk in that age group, that would be nullified if he played in the 9-10 age group? Scott.
From marklapp@stingles.com. To Scott Shipley. Sent Friday, February the 18th, 2011, at 7:58 p.m. Subject, regarding 9-10, baseball question. Hi Scott, I have not seen him play since last year. He does have an issue that seems to get worse. With that said, I have also noticed that as the year progresses he seems to do better. I also work with him a bit differently at times, knowing his issue, so in the past I have met with him when we did not have practice, just to work with him. He loves baseball. I don't know how much time he has left, where it will no longer be an option, or a discussion as we are having. He is a great kid. Really great and kind. I have never noticed any issues in the field except for outfield, as the high pops seem to be a bit harder for him to gauge. His mom Mindy is very much on top of his condition. I feel it could not hurt at all if he played in 9-10. I haven't coached 11-12 since my now 22-year-old was at that age. If you are thinking him being in 9-10 would make it unfair as an age advantage, I would disagree on that point. If history repeats itself, the first half of the season is almost a bust for him. Then, he starts adjusting his vision and things improve. Again, it has been a year now. I did notice a difference between 2 years ago and last year, so I am assuming there will be some added decline. I can also tell you that when we had strong hitters up and he was in the infield, I would always move him back many steps, where others may get moved back a step or two. I am actually surprised he is playing another year, and am really happy for him, as his days are numbered. If he is required to move to 11-12, I know he will not play. So maybe I can also have Alex move up to 11-12, so I can coach him there. I mean, given the choice, I would prefer one way or the other, to allow Josh to get as much sports playing as he can, while he can. I hope this helps. Thanks. Mark Stengel.
From Mindy Lipsy. Sent Friday, February 18, 2011, at 8:19 p.m. To marklapp@stengels.com. Subject, regarding 9-10, baseball question.
Thank you so much for your note. I have tears in my eyes, thinking about the fact that he will have to give it up one day. I hate that I can't fix it. He's come to terms with the fact that he won't play forever, so he'll adjust. He also said just because he can't play competitively, doesn't mean he can't still play with his friends, and his dad. And you're right. I have no idea how he'll start out. His vision declined a bit since last year, but functionally he's not much different. I'll let you know when I hear back from the board. Thanks again.
From msglobal2@comcast.net. Sent Friday, February the 18th, 2011, at 11:22 p.m. To Mindy Lipsy. Subject, regarding 9-10, baseball question. Hi Mindy, you are welcome. He sent me another note, and I basically said, it will be safer if he played in 9, 10. Period. If not, maybe I can move Alex up to 11, 12. One thing at a time. Take care. Mark. During that time, Miss Silisky calls Mr. Stengel and tells him, Mindy Lipsy said, there is no way she would allow him, Mr. Stengel, to coach Josh. Mr. Stengel knew then. She will no doubt ruin it for Josh. Which is exactly what happened. After all, Miss Silisky did the same thing with carpool. Originally, she quits the carpool, since she did not want to drive another 10 or 15 minutes. That did not break up the carpool. Furious, and in her psychotic and evil being, plays the helpful person, all the while running her agendas to ruin that as well. Miss Silisky doesn't help anyone. She is always asking for help. So when she appears to be helping, something smells really bad. And would not stop until she screwed it up. What was the result of Miss Silisky's carpool scam she ran? Alex's school started before Maya's. Maya, her own daughter, had to get up an hour early and sit in the car while Alex was driven to Boyce Latin, then back to Garrison Forest, a couple miles from the home. Does anyone really think Miss Silisky gives a rat's ass about Josh Lipsy, or anyone? Halfway through the baseball season, Josh's father calls Mr. Stengel, saying Josh is miserable, and asks Mr. Stengel if he can get Josh on his team. Mr. Stengel felt horrible. Unfortunately, it was way too late. Not for Miss Silisky. She was not done yet. Chaos is the order of the day, every day. At a later date, Mr. Stengel received this from Mindy Lipsy. Mindy Lipsy's criminally threatening letter to Mr. Stengel and conned to surrender her own First Amendment rights. Abusing disabled and blind children. All authorized and approved by this group and others. All authorized. So, Sarah Blackner, are you that fool? Abuse the Jews. All authorized and approved by this group and others. Sarah, you did surrender your own First Amendment rights to be informed you were being abused and conned to abuse as many as possible. Your husband Mark signed this as well, correct? This is your signed letter, which is identical to all but 2 of the 92. You wrote this letter like you wrote the many emails. Your friend tossed Hannah and their executive director, Nancy Aiken, under the bus, in a very big way. Conning Jews to abuse Jews. What exactly does your husband do? This is him, correct? Mark Blattner, President and CEO, Jewish Federation, Portland, Oregon.
Target locked.
Your letter, like all the other letters, was and is still being used to abuse Jews and many others. Did you know Miss Silisky named the entire Portland Federation? Surely all those that work under your husband will be happy to hear they have been spoken for. In fact, Miss Silisky wrote down separately the entire federation. Not just Portland, mind you. Portland was apparently added as a redundant bonus or double protection. You know, because of crazy Mr. Stengel. Or do we have to read your emails again? Once again, I ask. Sarah, are you that fool? Miss Silisky has a message for you.
You have no idea who I am. You have no idea who I am. You have no idea who I am.
It's August 26th at 9 a.m. and if anyone hears this, I just want to stay with my dad. By that I mean like full custody with my dad.
Witnesses. 1. Alexander Stengel. 2. Maya Stengel. 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 Witnesses. 1. Alexander Stengel. 2. Maya Stengel.
The alienation game. Fraud upon the courts. Fraud upon the public. Fraud upon humanity. The paragraph. Agreement. Pause to read. Minimum age of 18 required. December the 1st, 2011. custody trial, collusion/conspiracy. Known as the paragraph. Dr. Catherine Killeen, child custody evaluation expert, hired to do extensive psychological tests on both children, Mr. Stengel and Miss Siliski. Leon W. Berg, best interest attorney, calls Dr. Catherine Killeen as his only expert, and is the only person to take the stand. Dr. Catherine Killeen's sworn testimony, under oath under penalty of perjury, begins on page number 16, and concludes with Leon W. Berg on page number 96. Totaling 80 pages. Bradford G. Y. Carney represents Miss Siliski Stengel, who questions Dr. Catherine Killeen on pages 96 to 99. Total number of transcript pages for the entire day equals 117. For this presentation, we will focus on page number 96, known as the paragraph. The paragraph is what Leon W. Berg and Dr. Catherine Killeen provided to the court, and Judge Timothy Martin in total, regarding Miss Siliski, her actions, and the children's wishes/positions, as required by the Maryland Best Interest Attorney rules. We will also look at how we arrived at page number 96, as well as statements made by Leon W. Berg on June 18, 2013, and July 22, 2013. Important facts. On December 1, 2011, 11 months after the experts began, Dr. Catherine Killeen testifies under oath. 1. The only witness called on by Leon W. Berg, best interest attorney for the children. 2. Combined bills of Dr. Killeen and Mr. Berg exceed $112,000. 3. Dr. Killeen refused to provide her contractually obligated report for third-party outside review. 4. Therefore, alienating anyone from reviewing her actions and making questioning her actions or testimony nearly impossible. 5. Dr. Killeen provides 80 pages of false testimony regarding Mr. Stengel, ending on page number 96, of only 117 pages for the entire trial. 6. Dr. Killeen also refused to provide her monthly bills for nearly 7 months leading up to her sworn testimony. 7. Therefore, even alienating Mr. Stengel from knowing any of her actions, even if only by way of her line-item billing. 8. However, Dr. Killeen printed 170 invoices during that period, just none, to Mr. Stengel. 9. During that period, Dr. Killeen left $4,000 of Mr. Stengel's money, lay dormant in his escrow account, so not to have to create any invoice. 10. Dr. Killeen's estimated services are $10,750 to $13,250. The national average for these services range from $3,000 to $7,000. 11. Prior to Dr. Killeen's testimony, and as of her last invoice, dated May 16, 2011, payments made by Mr. Stengel were already in excess of $20,000. 12. 1 week after Dr. Killeen's sworn perjured testimony, she magically generated a $27,025 bill for Mr. Stengel for the nearly 7-month span of not generating invoices, which from appearances was specifically in regards to Mr. Stengel's account. Let's do a quick visual summary before moving on. Mr. Leon W. Berg begins on January 6, 2011. Dr. Catherine Killeen begins on January 7, 2011. On January 7, 2011, Mr. Berg sent a request for information. The response to Mr. Berg's request of January 7, 2011, was provided by Mr. Stengel in February 2011. It notes, Dr. Alan Kimmel, Ms. Stengel's medical doctor, aware of Ms. Stengel's mental health issues. Note, Miss Siliski Stengel has long-term mental illness, which is well documented in her medical records. After Dr. Killeen spoke with Dr. Kimmel, Leon W. Berg, and Dr. Catherine Killeen, both refused to obtain Miss Siliski's medical records for her extensive psychological evaluation, for any report, and especially for the courts. On May 16, 2011, Dr. Catherine Killeen generated a bill for Mr. Stengel to pay. Dr. Killeen then plays Hide the Fraud bills. June 2011, no bills generated. Mr. Stengel kept in the dark. July 2011, no bills generated. Mr. Stengel kept in the dark. August 2011, no bills generated. Mr. Stengel kept in the dark. September 2011, no bills generated. Mr. Stengel kept in the dark. October 2011, no bills generated. Mr. Stengel kept in the dark. November 2011, no bills generated. Mr. Stengel kept in the dark. December the 1st, 2011, Dr. Catherine Killeen testifies as an expert in the child custody case. 1 week later, on December the 8th, 2011, Dr. Catherine Killeen generates a bill for Mr. Stengel for $27,025. As you have been advised, this is all but a micro drop of what has been compiled regarding Mr. Stengel's research subjects, as there are several thousands of puzzle pieces. In Mr. Stengel's research, you will learn your life is loaded with things that are obvious and all around you, even right in front of you, and you can't see it, let alone understand it, let alone prevent being victimized. However, after properly trained, what now is the unknown to you will become the obvious. Like another of Mr. Stengel's research subjects, an extremely high-level unconscionable. You may know his name. Donald Trump. Class. When properly trained, you can dissect their psychosis on the fly, therefore, easily trap them, as the street rats they are. Meanwhile, simply focus on just a few things, as they all have the same traits, and repeat their actions, therefore, each other's actions. It's quite remarkable. Again, these are just samples. 1. Chaos surrounds them. Period. 2. Constant chaos, which is always someone else's fault. However, they create the chaos, and constantly. 3. Allegations equals confessions. 4. Redirect focus, then attack. For example, Trump's allegation of President Obama wiretapping his phones. Most will argue whether it is true or not. However, from Reality Boulevard, President Obama, you were kindly informed where the investigation needs to be. Because it's simply a confession, not in the language you are familiar with, rather in the language of unconscionables, the language of psychosis, evil psychosis, a language you are not only currently unfamiliar with, but completely unaware of its existence. Mr. Stengel's research, which includes many tools for the average person, is so powerful, it's retroactive. You will be able to go back in time and reshuffle the deck from Reality Boulevard, where things completely missed will be glaring with bright lights flashing. For example, you can go back and learn exactly when Donald Trump confessed to the rigging of the election. Mr. Stengel knew then. Donald Trump was no doubt going to be the next person occupying the Oval Office. Got it? Good. 5. They are by default pathological liars. 6. They are bullies. And let's add one more for right now, as there are many. 7. Like Donald Trump, who for the last several years has been one of Mr. Stengel's research subjects, now unknowingly took center stage in Mr. Stengel's research. If it comes out of his mouth, it's bullshit. Period. Therefore, clarifying one thing for sure. Whatever he says, you can be sure it's not. You may not know what the reality is, however, what you do know is what it's not. For these very reasons, Donald Trump will not openly debate Mr. Stengel, nor will any extremely high-level unconscionable. Although it may appear what they are saying is correct, you can be very sure there are covert actions involved, or within the undisclosed agenda. Like this page you have been staring at for quite some time. So, now, let's add another puzzle piece. Chances are, no alert went off, yet it's very odd and unusual, and it's right in front of you. You may be curious of Dr. Killeen generating a bill in the middle of the month. And why, on the 16th, a Monday, the beginning of the week, and not on the 20th, a Friday? At least at the end of the week, right? Although dissected in another presentation, here is a small sample of that dissection. The short answer is, due to her hiding her line items. Because, on May the 19th, 2011, her fraud and extortion bill notes calls to medical professionals such as Dr. Kimmel, and others, which cannot be seen until a full week after her fraudulent testimony. As you will learn in the dissecting, she fraudulently opined for those medical doctors and others listed. You will also learn which doctor she refused to contact, as that doctor is not noted anywhere in her fraud bills. Therefore, we go from point A to point C. See that scam? Really? 13. We pay special attention, as Mr. Leon W. Berg has yet to provide information regarding the children, their wishes and positions, repeatedly made clear to Mr. Leon W. Berg, best interest attorney, and many others. Mr. Berg's own contract agrees with the Maryland state rules governing best interest attorney, and specifically, in these regards. 14. Mr. Berg must have been saving it up, and eager to deliver it all, directly to the judge. Note, Robert Wayne Lazaro, Mr. Stengel's alleged attorney, aka the Mole, who was hired in May 2011 for this very reason, and who came in and out of the case, was on this day out of the case. Either way, he never asked for Dr. Killeen's bills, or insisted on her report. Furthermore, Mr. Lazaro never questioned, or suggested questioning Dr. Catherine Killeen, Leon W. Berg or Bradford G. Y. Carney, regarding their outrageous bills, which they all demanded Mr. Stengel pay. Mr. Lazaro refused to cross-examine Dr. Catherine Killeen, stating,
"I have to work in this town after your case."
We will now look at what transpired on that day. The pre-paragraph, opportunity number 1, with Dr. Catherine Killeen falsely disparaging Mr. Stengel for the last 56 pages, and now on page number 72, where Judge Martin wants to hear from Dr. Catherine Killeen regarding Miss Siliski.
Okay, I'll just keep our perspective. I'd like to hear Dr. Clean's comments on why you feel what you feel, but I really need to see a DVD. I understand it's very important to you and significant, and it's part of the wellspring for your whole opinion. But I guess the focus now is Mrs. Stengel, so what do you want to tell me about her?
Could we take a few minute break?
Yeah. You want a break for lunch now? Is that what you're saying?
Well, Your Honor, it is 5 of 12, and I certainly would have no problem breaking.
All right, let's break for lunch. We'll start again at 1. Thank you.
Opportunity number 2. After lunch, we pick up on page number 73.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Killeen, I believe at this point you wanted to discuss certain findings regarding Mrs. Stengel.
I did, but I wanted to just backtrack for 1 minute and talk about...
This redirect, to continue falsely disparaging Mr. Stengel, lasted another 23 pages. Eventually, led to the paragraph on page number 96, where during most of the paragraph, Dr. Killeen falsely disparages Mr. Stengel.
I think Mr. Stengel's he's got some real tough work ahead of him. I'm not trying to paint Ms. Stengel as perfect by a long shot. I think she's got her difficulties, she's got her issues. I think she has taken it on to address some of them in a responsible way. And I think she's also had to just sort of, live a little bit of a bunker mentality, because you can see the amount of material that's come down in this case. And I'm not personally involved, and there have been many a day where I have just felt overwhelmed. So I can't imagine that a reasonable person, including the kids, would feel overwhelmed. That's the end of my testimony.
That's it. Not a scintilla of information regarding Miss Siliski. However, we know Miss Siliski's medical records, which Dr. Catherine Killeen or Leon W. Berg refused to obtain, show long-term mental illness. Although that information was provided to the so-called experts very early on, it's clear why they refused to obtain Miss Siliski's medical records. That 30-minute call made to Dr. Kimmel by the so-called impartial expert, Dr. Catherine Killeen, on May 19, 2011, as documented in her own bill, confirmed what Mr. Stengel had sent 3 months earlier. Mr. Stengel later confirmed no request was made for those records. Fraud, fraud, fraud. Even though Mr. Stengel refused to pay Mr. Berg, for a very long time, Mr. Berg refused to get out of the case. 1.5 years later, on June 18, 2013, in Mr. Leon W. Berg's response to Mr. Stengel's filing to have Mr. Berg removed as best interest attorney, Mr. Berg fights and claws to remain in the case, simply to alienate his years of crimes, frauds and abuses from any other best interest attorney, looking at Mr. Berg's years of evil actions. Here Mr. Berg provided to the courts, sworn under oath and the penalty of perjury, in regards to this very paragraph, issue, noted on his 10th page as number 16A, states,
In the December 1, 2011, proceeding, the best interest attorney asked Dr. Killeen if she had any observations to make of Mrs. Stengel. The court interrupted, suggesting that the inquiry was unnecessary.
Note, huh? Unnecessary? Really? Before we look into that obvious perjury, as we already know, Judge Martin was specifically asking for that information, which turned into 2 redirects, before we got to page number 96, where 0 information was provided. However, let's see what Mr. Berg also provided just 1 month after this knowingly fraudulent response, under oath and the penalty of perjury. Mr. Stengel files a complaint to the Attorney Grievance Commission of Maryland against Mr. Leon W. Berg. On July 22, 2013, Mr. Berg responds to the complaint filed by Mr. Stengel on this very subject, noted as number 11, letter G, where Mr. Berg, beginning on line 2, states,
As best interest attorney, I made no findings. As between the parties, there was no doubt in my mind that the matters of concern regarding Mr. Stengel as voiced by Dr. Killeen, were far more compelling than any concerns about Miss Zaleski.
Note, already, we have a psychotic response by Mr. Berg, where he states,
As best interest attorney, I made no findings.
Then, proceeds to provide his findings.
As between the parties, there was no doubt, in my mind.
Not only does Mr. Berg provide his findings, he has no doubt. No doubt? Really? 0 doubt. Furthermore, Mr. Berg states,
The matters of concern regarding Mr. Stengel as voiced by Dr. Killeen, were far more compelling than any concerns about Miss Zaleski.
Note, it wouldn't take much to be more compelling than any concerns about Miss Zaleski, which was 0. Now, if we add the 80 pages targeting Mr. Stengel and the well-being of his children, one could understand it not being just more compelling, rather
far more compelling.
Note, apparently more compelling than all the videos, audio journals, letters, text messages, emails, presentations, police reports, fraudulent filings, over 2,000 counts of perjury, and much more.
Far more compelling. Far more compelling.
Next, Mr. Berg provides what is known as the paragraph, and below states,
At that point in the hearing, I offered to present testimony from Dr. Killeen as to her observations regarding Miss Zaleski. Judge Martin cut me off.
Mr. Leon W. Berg, just a month earlier, lies yet again to the courts, and here, in a covert attempt, tries to hoodwink the Attorney Oversight Commission. 1. Mr. Leon W. Berg ended the paragraph prematurely, leaving out Dr. Catherine Killeen's statement after the word overwhelmed. Yet states,
At that point in the hearing,
Mr. Berg, nor anyone else said anything at that point, as Dr. Killeen ended her testimony by stating,
that a recent person, including the kids, would feel overwhelmed. That's the end of my testimony. That's the end of my testimony. That's the end of my testimony.
However, Mr. Leon W. Berg, having abused Mr. Stengel, Mr. Stengel's children, their schools, police, teachers, therapists, religious leaders, attorneys, judges, abuse organizations, charities, sheriffs, the justice system, entire communities, the taxpayers, and humanity itself, in order to profit off the backs of his minor clients, and others, along with his crime ring, who collectively, as the designers and conspirators, will always be forced to provide knowingly fraudulent information and statements, so long as he and they shall live. So help them Satan. Evidenced by the recent 2 perjurious filings, a full 1.5 years later. Let's look at the rest of Mr. Berg's knowingly fraudulent statement, with full knowledge and malice.
At that point in the hearing, I offered to present testimony from Dr. Killeen as to her observations regarding Miss Zaleski. Judge Martin cut me off.
Note, Judge Martin cut you off? Really? Really, Mr. Berg? We will look at the entire ending. Because what Judge Martin said, this after 2 earlier attempts, where he received not information, rather redirects, to either take a break, or further falsely disparage Mr. Stengel, for an additional 23 pages. In fact, Judge Martin said he received nothing from you, Mr. Leon W. Berg, or your corrupt crime ring member and so-called expert, Dr. Catherine Killeen. Judge Martin stating he could not glean anything from. At which time Mr. Leon W. Berg, if he wanted to, could have said, well then, allow us to elaborate. Now that Your Honor informed us, we provided nothing. Instead, what did Mr. Leon W. Berg do? Exactly what his child predators and society predatory crime ring colluded and conspired to do, as well documented in their own fraud bills. Provide knowingly false information regarding Mr. Stengel. Not only knowingly false, but false information they either created or knowingly forwarded to obtain a predetermined agenda. 0 was put on the record as defined in the Maryland rules for a best interest attorney regarding the children, and nothing regarding the psychopath, Miss Siliski. However, let's listen to it anyway, shall we?
He's got some real tough work ahead of him. I'm not trying to paint Miss Stengel as perfect by a long shot. I think she's got her difficulties, she's got her issues. I think she has taken it on to address some of them in a responsible way. And I think she's also had to just sort of, live a little bit of a bunker mentality, because you can see the amount of material that's come down in this case. And I'm not personally involved, and there have been many a day where I have just felt overwhelmed. So I can't imagine that a reasonable person, including the kids, would feel overwhelmed. That's the end of my testimony.
Any further questions from the BIA towards Dr. Killeen?
Did you want to make any general statements about your observations regarding Mrs. Stengel, or you
certainly not for me to and infer what your position is.
All right then. General statement, opposed to nothing. What would the judge get from general, given the 80 pages of specific false statements regarding Mr. Stengel, and the falsely opining 4 other professionals? Really, Mr. Leon W. Berg, during another of Mr. Berg's bullshit responses, says, well, it was pendente light, so therefore, blah, blah. So how does the 80 pages of knowingly false statements fit into that fraudulent answer, Mr. Leon W. Berg? That after being told by the hoodwinked Judge Timothy Martin, he got nothing. This after almost a year of conning and scamming everyone in your path. And that doesn't include what Judge Martin did receive, being conspired, colluded and knowingly false and fraudulent information, as documented in all of their very own fraud bills. Therefore, with foreknowledge and malice, in sworn testimony by Dr. Catherine Killeen, all suborned by Mr. Leon W. Berg, and 0 regarding any position or wishes about the children either. Mr. Leon W. Berg, everyone is looking at you. After all, you are now famous.
Maybe Mr. Berg should be doing some squats to loosen up a little.
Mr. Berg, you are a disgrace to humanity.
Wait until his buddies, authorizing these abuses, and knowingly so, are also held accountable. How many families over the decades? How many children's lives have you intentionally ruined? Then, there are the federal agencies, also knowingly and falsely lied to and manipulated. Game is over, Mr. Leon W. Berg. They are all looking at you and your entire crime ring. Besides Mr. Leon W. Berg, what do you think is going to happen after the hundreds that may be sued due to your actions are going to do, Mr. Leon W. Berg? The bottom line is,
Big stuff. Who do you think you are? Big stuff. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are?
let's review this one once more.
In the December 1, 2011, proceeding, the best interest attorney asked Dr. Killeen if she had any observations to make of Mrs. Stengel. The court interrupted, suggesting that the inquiry was unnecessary.
Note, just so we are clear on one of the hundreds of Mr. Berg's fraudulent responses to the courts, it appears in this one, on June the 18th, 2013, Mr. Leon W. Berg, best interest attorney for minor children, is saying, a circuit court judge, in the family court, suggested that hearing about both parents, opposed to just one, was unnecessary. Do we have this correct, Mr. Leon W. Berg? Then 1 month later, Mr. Berg abandons this fraudulent, perjurious, bullshit statement for an updated fraudulent, perjurious, bullshit statement made directly to the Attorney Oversight Commission. Excuse me. The corrupt Attorney Oversight Commission. The only person Mr. Leon W. Berg wanted to speak to on Mr. Stengel's side was his ex-wife. Guess why? However, it didn't work out as Mr. Berg had planned. Here is her affidavit regarding that conversation. Mark Stengel, plaintiff, versus Susan Siliski Stengel, defendant. Case number 03C10-014265. Affidavit.
I, Jody Rubin, affirm under the penalties of perjury the following information to be true to the best of my knowledge, information, and belief. 1. I am over 18 years of age, and competent to testify with regard to this matter. 2. I am the former spouse of the plaintiff Mark Stengel. 3. On April 14, 2011, the best interest attorney, Leon Berg, interviewed me for approximately 40 minutes. During this interview, Mr. Berg made statements and asked me questions that I considered to be strange, as he seemed to be describing the defendant, Susan Siliski Stengel, as opposed to the plaintiff. Similarly, when Mr. Berg spoke of the defendant, it appeared to me that he was actually speaking about the plaintiff. It had appeared to me that Mr. Berg had gotten the parties confused. 4. It became apparent that Mr. Berg was not acting objectively, and that he had only interviewed me with the hope of obtaining information, which would be damaging to the plaintiff. Jody Rubin.
How do we know all of Dr. Catherine Killeen's sworn testimony under oath under penalty of perjury was falsely, with foreknowledge and malice, targeted at disparaging Mr. Stengel? On page number 30, Dr. Catherine Killeen swears Miss Siliski is the clear choice. Listen.
What is that opinion?
In my opinion, the best interest of the children, would best be served by granting legal custody pendente lite to Mrs. Stengel.
Based on your investigation as described your expertise in the field, do you have an opinion within a reasonable professional certainty as to which parent is in a better position, pendente lite, to serve as the primary residential parent?
I do have an opinion.
And what is that opinion?
It is my opinion that Ms. Stengel would be the parent that would be best able to serve as the primary residential parent pendente lite.
Boy kids?
Yes.
You may have noticed, both Dr. Catherine Killeen and Leon W. Berg kept repeating, pendente lite. That means temporarily. Like a few weeks or a couple months. Besides, this was not a temporary hearing, rather the custody hearing. Therefore, setting up more fraud billing. Like so many of her clients complain about, with her often stating, for this school year. Simply setting up more fraud and extortion billing. However, they kept repeating pendente lite. As if it's their out clause for the fraud they not only were partaking in, but created. Besides, their pendente lite was more than 5 years ago. What was sworn to when Dr. Killeen took the stand under oath and the penalty of perjury, up until this point, simply set the framework for their pre-designed fraud, as was everything afterwards, until Dr. Catherine Killeen stopped talking. Although what you in essence heard was Miss Siliski is the better choice, is simply a statement. Until all of their reasonings, plural, are addressed, validated and confirmed. As one would come to expect from an expert. That's where the rubber meets the road. However, you are listening to Psychosis, Explain Psychosis. If you listen to all of Dr. Killeen's sworn testimony, it will be the identical format the entire crime ring uses. They never say one thing positive about Miss Siliski. Dr. Killeen stated Alex never refused to go over to his mom's. Although we know that to be a lie many times over, let's assume it's true. That's the positive. The child hasn't refused to go to the, correct me if I'm wrong, but the better parent. What specific kind of horror exists on the other parent's side, if this is a positive for the good parent? Besides, we know it's false. It's bullshit. Wrapped in bullshit.
He has never actually refused to go over to her house, so...
Subject, Free Alex and Maya. Email dated November the 28th, 2011, at 3:54 a.m. From Mr. Stengel, to Dr. Catherine Killeen, and Robert Wayne Lazaro. Note. Dr. Catherine Killeen receiving this, just 3 days before her sworn expert testimony. The email reads, "Hello, it is very late and I just can't sleep. Tonight was a mess for Alex as Susie shows up with Alex's math teacher. No kidding. An older woman whose name happened to be dropped by Carney during the case last week. Meanwhile, Alex refused to get out of the car. First I tried talking to him, then his math teacher came over and we both were talking to him, then Susie came over and he told her where to go and he does not want to live with her, let alone 2 days with me, which she replied, it is not her doing. No kidding. She then went inside and got 2 police officers to force Alex out of the car. Note, for now, we will focus on just a few words. Alex refused to get out of the car. Let's listen to Dr. Catherine Killeen's sworn testimony, just 3 days later, on page number 47.
He has never actually refused to go over to her house, so...
Or, Alex's letter to his mother, just 2 months prior, and dated September the 29th, 2011, and insisted it also be sent to Dr. Killeen, Mr. Berg and Dr. Eisenberg, which was done.
He has never actually refused to go over to her house, so...
And a month before that, Alex's audio journal, also provided to Dr. Killeen, Mr. Berg, and others.
It's August 26th at 9 a.m. and if anyone hears this, I just want to stay with my dad. As by that I mean like full custody with my dad.
He has never actually refused to go over to her house, so...
Although these are but a micro drop of samples, they each live on its own merit, confirming a serial perjurer and serial suborning perjurer. But they also leave quite a trail.
He has never actually refused to go over to her house, so...
Again, even if true, we can ignore it all. Abuses repeatedly reported, and provided for 11 months, as of December the 1st, 2011. Provided to many, even schools. Also ignore Alex's documented refusal to go with his mother, just 3 days before Dr. Killeen's sworn expert testimony. Also ignore Alex also clarified, directly to his mother, he did not want to live with her, period. Even if Jean Campbell, a boys Latin school teacher, witnesses it all taking place outside the police station. Just 3 days after receiving this information, Dr. Catherine Killeen provides sworn testimony on December the 1st, 2011. She is questioned by Leon W. Berg, his only witness. If we ignore everything, we're left with what is apparently considered the upside. The upside of their collective $112,000 plus of fraud bills. $49,700 plus for Dr. Catherine Killeen, and $62,000 plus for Leon W. Berg, best interest attorney. To what end?
He has never actually refused to go over to her house, so...
Almost forgot. Earlier, Dr. Killeen clarified her business model. So, what else would Dr. Catherine Killeen like to swear to, as an expert, under oath, and the penalty of perjury, on December the 1st, 2011? Well, way back on page number 23, as the stage was being set. Let's listen. Let's zoom in.
Well, the methodology that I used in this case is standard acceptable methodology when one is conducting a custody evaluation. And the guidelines of the American Psychological Association. He has never actually refused to go over to her house, so...
Methodology, or psychology. On the other end, they collectively as well, all agree on all of the same wrong answers, in regards to Mr. Stengel, the extreme opposite to reality. See, they do the extremes on both sides. That's what makes it extreme, which makes it more difficult to believe, as it's unimaginable, and you will sound crazy. Now add a few more people, with so-called good reputations. Are they all nuts? No, not nuts. Psychotic. If you made it this far, you should keep going, as they are beyond psychotic. Pure evil. Let's listen to what Dr. Catherine Killeen and Leon W. Berg provided to the courts in total, regarding what is positive, regarding Mr. Stengel. On pages 64 to 65, Dr. Killeen states,
I don't want to say that there aren't some Allison is their mind, her dad. When you're not talking about things that we're talking about today, you know, they can be very affectionate with him. He plays sports with them. You know, he fixed dinner for him. I mean...
Note, what you are listening to is how the brain of a sociopath operates. Fragmented parts of information from wherever. Pay close attention, as these are not mistakes, rather one's fragmented brain, commonly seen in sociopaths. Furthermore, this is rampant throughout Dr. Catherine Killeen's sworn testimony. Let's review it. 1.
Between Alex and her dad. Between Alex and her dad.
Note, between Alex and her dad. Reality, Alex is not her. Then Dr. Killeen provides more disjointed speaking, before she gets it straight.
Between Alex and her dad, and mine and her dad, and Allison is their mine, her dad.
2. Next is simply another confession, where Dr. Killeen states,
When you're not talking about things that we're talking about today.
Note, when you're not talking about things that we're talking about today. What does that even mean? When you're not talking about things that we're talking about today. Babbling nonsense. Babbling nonsense in the context of the garbage being sold. However, in reality, it's valuable information of their covert actions. Fact, translated, when Dr. Killeen is not talking about their designed scams they are talking about today, there is other information, however, we are not talking about that today. Let's listen again, before we move on.
When you're not talking about things that we're talking about today.
Translated, when we are not talking about reality, opposed to the psychotic, evil, pre-designed fraud and perjury we are spewing today. The children have a great and affectionate relationship with their father. But we are not talking about that today. Hell no. 3. Next, we have the positive, with some specifics, but not really. Let's listen.
He plays sports with them. You know, he fixed dinner for them.
Note, he plays sports with them. You know, he fixes dinner for them. Really? He plays sports with them? Even if we just stick to that one area, what about Mr. Stengel managing all of their baseball teams, and coaching all of their basketball teams? Both Alex and Maya. As Mr. Stengel did with his oldest son. What about taking Maya to her swim lessons? Or dancing with Maya, or reading to them, or taking them to the pool or ocean to swim? Or family events, such as bar and bat mitzvahs, which Mr. Stengel was not even informed about Alex or Maya's, let alone invited. Or never missing any school event, for any of his children. Or never missing a parent-teacher meeting, or helping with their homework, science, projects. Or anything else seen in the several hundreds of photos Mr. Stengel is illegally forbidden to put online. Maybe that's why that fraud scam includes Mr. Stengel not putting photos of his children online. Because each and every photo contradict all of your frauds. All the many life lessons taught, such as you all will be taught and famous for. You know. What is meant by, you know. You know. He fixes dinner for them. Huh? The children don't eat breakfast or lunch. Reality, what Leon W. Berg and Dr. Catherine Killeen are really saying is,
You know what we are saying, Judge Martin. You know. Mr. Stengel is not very involved in their lives, and would not be missed. After all, plays some sports, and makes dinner once in a while.
Even if we ignore all of their collusion, documented in each of their own bills, in the few days leading up to this criminal conspiracy being carried out, they collectively could not come up with even one positive for Miss Silisky. Therefore, if we use first-grade math, correct me if I'm wrong, but Mr. Stengel's positive score is 2. Miss Silisky's score is 0. If we advance to third-grade math, Mr. Stengel is batting 1,000, when compared to Miss Silisky batting 0.
I asked many times, but Mr. Berg would not allow me to talk to a judge. Mr. Berg, did you tell that to the judge? Did you tell anyone that? What exactly did you tell the judge? What exactly did you tell everyone? What did you tell my school? Because they still have it all backwards. Mr. Berg and Dr. Killeen did the complete opposite. What about our rights? What about our rights?
He has never actually refused to go over to her house. So
unethical psychologist forces children into delusional world. Some may ask the father, so why publicly expose this? How can this be a good thing for the children? It was answered by Dr. Catherine Killeen on pages 54 to 55. Transcript December the 1st, 2011, pages number 54 to 55.
So what happens when somebody's being kind of spoon-fed or force-fed a worldview that doesn't really match with their experiences is that you're undermining their sense of reality. And that, to me, is the most damaging of all. Because if I can't trust my judgment about what's real and what's not real, I am in big trouble. I don't know what people to trust. I don't know what institutions to trust. It undermines any sense of self-integrity, self-confidence. It's a very, very devastating condition, and it sets up...
And would it be more so at Alex's particular age?
When we are done, hopefully we will be successful at shoving our delusion down your throats as reality. And your own experiences, with your mother and father, your reality, you must come to realize, you are just delusional.
In reading any of Dr. Catherine Killeen's sworn testimony under oath and the penalty of perjury, in order to keep their colluded story straight, they simply switched the names. Guess what happens when you read Dr. Killeen's testimony, like her 80 pages regarding the father, and replace the father with the mother? All the evidence, magically, lines up. And also matches Mr. Stengel's ex-wife, Jody Rubin's affidavit, 7.5 months prior. This confirms their psychotic and pre-planned agenda, as they consistently abused and violated everyone in their paths, with very bad intentions.
During this interview, Mr. Berg made statements and asked me questions that I considered to be strange, as he seemed to be describing the defendant, Susan Selesky Stengel, as opposed to the plaintiff. Similarly, when Mr. Berg spoke of the defendant, it appeared to me that he was actually speaking about the plaintiff. It had appeared to me that Mr. Berg had gotten the parties confused.
At the time, Jody Rubin didn't understand one fact. Mr. Berg was not confused about the parties. Reality. Mr. Liam W. Berg, way back on April the 14th, 2011, was confessing to their pre-designed agenda.
He has never actually refused to go over to her house, so...
It's August 26th at 9 a.m. and if anyone hears this, I just want to stay with my dad. As by that I mean like full custody with my dad.
How much is just one memory worth? How much is just one missed memory worth?
There's a beautiful day headed your way. Keep your head up, you'll be okay. A beautiful day waiting for you. Just open your eyes, you'll see it's true. Good times, sunshine, gonna be here in no time now. Bad times, gray skies, push them all away, turn them upside down. You're gonna break new ground, turn everything around. You're gonna live your life. There's a beautiful day headed your way.
How much is just one memory worth? How much is just one missed memory worth?
Witnesses. 1. Alexander Stengel. 2. Maya Stengel. 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 Witnesses. 1. Alexander Stengel. 2. Maya Stengel.
Day December 18th. The day I finally broke out of prison.
Witnesses. 1. Alexander Stengel. 2. Maya Stengel.
Day December 18th. The day I finally broke out of prison. It's August 26th at 9 a.m. and if anyone hears this, I just want to stay with my dad. By that I mean like full custody with my dad.
Congratulations! You have completed the prerequisite summaries portion of the series. The detailed portion would take at least 3 to 10 times longer. However, now, with about 2% of the series completed, you are able to move on to the introduction of the series. To better understand just some of the summaries that lie ahead, the next 7 minutes are but a sampling of what will be exposed. Just the titles, and just a sampling.
Which crime can you get away with? The summary of the short list is as follows. Illegal execution of father's will, Gordon Selesky. Bank fraud. Forgery. Attempted theft of real property. Unemployment fraud. Filing false tax returns. The United States postal mail fraud. Thousands stolen from a charity and documented. Dozens, plural, of staged events, to con and manipulate others. Forged checks, plural. Fraud upon the district court. Forged certificates of deposits. Illegally obtained real property. Illegal closing of corporations, plural, and theft of bank account balances. Forged contracts. Child abuses, daily. Grand theft. Intentional attacks, waged upon schools and teachers. Cult-like brainwashing tactics used to commit harm. Con others into criminal actions and abuses. Illegal and covert audio recordings. Neglect of minor child. False allegations towards the commissioner. Invasion of privacy acts, plural. Fraud upon the circuit court. False swearing. Elderly abuses. Identity fraud, dozens, and in multiple states. Defamation. Intentional abuses and crimes committed with malice. Abuses targeting Northwest Hospital staff. Obtains false and fraudulent gag orders. Illegal formation of corporation. Filing false sworn affidavits or motions. Wrongfully involves people from multiple states and countries. Conversion of real property, twice. False incarceration of brother, Robert Selesky. Tax fraud. Extortion by threats. Fraud. Sibling alienation. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Manipulates and cons many to file false and fraudulent police reports in multiple districts, and in multiple states. Theft of monies well exceeds $250,000. Wrongfully uses and abuses taxpayer dollars, millions. Enroll relatives to assist in brother's false incarceration. Fraud upon the appellate court. Child kidnapping. Detained minor children against will, multiple times. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Committing violence in front of minor child. Abuses and targets, Lifebridge Health, and their Domestic Violence Department, Dove. Fraudulent handling of father's estate, Gordon Selesky. Fraudulently obtained child care voucher. Extortion by false accusation. Forces 9-year-old daughter to commit crimes. Illegal and fraudulent execution of father's power of attorney, then, that same exact day, theft of $30,000 insurance policy left to Marlis Lita, by father. Refused contact, and alienated all of father's friends and associates, even after forcing father into hospice, and forbidden to say goodbye. Wrongfully and with foreknowledge, involves schools, plural. Stalking, numerous accounts. Manipulates and cons others, to write unwarranted threatening letters. Fraud against Social Security Disability. Abuses and targets Jewish Women's Abuse Organization, Hannah. Collusion to commit fraud. Collusion to commit perjury. Illegal distribution of stolen monies. Money laundering. Abuses targeting justice system. Fraud and abuse against Maryland Department of Human Resources. Illegally obtained United States passport. Racketeering. Abuses targeting minor children of others. Confessions of abuses. Illegally closed father's estate, Gordon Selesky. Identity theft, dozens, and in multiple states. Counterfeiting of orders for money. Conspiracy to counterfeit orders, for money. Abuses targeting domestic violence police, and domestic violence coordinators. Conspiracy to abuse police. Lies to police, dozens of times. Confessed to lying to police. Illegally obtained judgments. Public assistance fraud. Ignoring subpoena. Conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States. Extortion by written threat. Con and manipulate others, to commit extortion by written threat. Conspiracy to manipulate others, to commit extortion by written threat. Abuses targeting social workers. In possession of stolen property. Robbery. Forged bank documents. Witness tampering. Obstruction of justice. Criminal gang offenses. Fraudulently obtained school grants. Abuses and cons, targeting medical professionals. Perjury, perjury, perjury. Parental alienation. Abuses targeting religious leaders. Abuses targeting religious institutions. Computer hacking, caught on tape. Exploiting of vulnerable adults, plural. Witness intimidation. Abuses targeting psychologists. Restraining liberties, plural. Filing fraudulent liens. False criminal filings, plural. Suborning perjury. Altering evidence. False sworn testimony regarding altered evidence. Confessions regarding altered evidence. Harassment. False statements to federal agents. Conspiracy to commit psychological warfare, on hundreds. Refuses to provide computer hackers information, a federal crime, caught on tape. Fraud upon the federal court. False incarceration. 2 suspicious deaths. How to almost get away with manslaughter, and murder. The list goes on and on. And still going. Which poses many questions. Who is protecting the public? Who is protecting the children? Who is protecting the victims? Who is responsible for assisting in even one of these crimes? Who is responsible for assisting in many of these, and many other crimes? Who is responsible for ignoring any of these crimes? Therefore, who is responsible for authorizing any of these crimes? Therefore, who is responsible for authorizing so many of these crimes? When is a crime not a crime? When does cashing each and every paycheck to protect the public, while well aware of crimes, therefore authorizing each crime, make that authoritative person not a paid criminal?
Well, what do you all do for a living?
Who is asking?
We, the people. Can you show us what you all do, instead of tell us? Well.
Witnesses. 1. Alexander Stengel. 2. Maya Stengel. Witnesses. 1. Alexander Stengel. 2. Maya Stengel. Witnesses. 1. Alexander Stengel. 2. Maya Stengel. Witnesses. 1. Alexander Stengel. 2. Maya Stengel.
Day December 18th. The day I finally broke out of prison. It's August 26th at 9 a.m. and if anyone hears this, I just want to stay with my dad. By that I mean like full custody with my dad.
Insert disc number 3. Go on.